Shapen, a soft loft, and it's caught inside the 10. Drew Estrada.
Welcome to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Jerome Ford, big seam. Jerome Ford is revving and tearing it up. Touchdown, Cincinnati, 79 yards.
Sikkim 365 Radio is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
All three tight ends on the field again. It's a run on the delay. Thomas, the touchdown. And Utah strikes first.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Well, 2 timeouts left. Minute 10 the first half. See if the Falcons can get something going here. And not there. As dropped as Ryan, he fumbled, but it's picked up. As Micah Parsons came through.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Wednesday afternoon. First week of July with college football's present and maybe future, of course, on everybody's mind, like it is ours as well. An update on the meeting yesterday that Colorado had with a discussion about what may be going on and possible options with their Board of Regents. The possibility of whatever the Pac-12 and ACC may want to do, which is something we kind of touched on a little bit yesterday, and all of that. And one of the questions I have for today as well is if whoever your alma mater is, or whoever is your favorite college football team, if they don't end up in the future as a part of whatever the highest atmosphere is going to be, would that affect whatever level of commitment you have financially to your alma mater or what you do with the team that you like? We'll get into that at some point today as well. Ross Dellenger, Andy Staples, Tim Brando today, and UCLA beat writer Ben Bolch of the LA Times as well, along with our top 5 with Paul and John Machota at 5:30. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak. We appreciate your time today on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. So one quick note. This is not about the landscape of college football, but next Wednesday and Thursday in Arlington, it is Big 12 Media Days. And every team will have their coach and players. Now, this graphic, which was given to us or sent to us by the Big 12, in the top left-hand corner, that's Baylor. There actually are 4 players representing Baylor. It will also include Grant Miller, offensive lineman, who's not a part of that list, but you can see the 3 names, and there are the teams and also who will represent each of those schools next Wednesday and Thursday, whatever day it might be for them, will be there at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. Also, Brett Yormark will be introduced by Baylor President Dr. Linda Livingstone to kick things off Wednesday very early in the day as she introduces the new Big 12 commissioner as well. At least there's something football-wise for us to discuss as well. Now, Brian Howell had this graphic about Colorado yesterday evening. According to a source, last night's Colorado Board of Regents meeting was called so athletics and campus could educate the regents on the many options facing Colorado regarding the Pac-12 and realignment. No action was taken. I had a conversation with Brian earlier this afternoon, and he kind of gave me the impression, he goes, listen, no one's talking to me. No one's really talking much at all, but he feels like that he thinks that Colorado would love at some point, and most likely will at some point end back up in the Big 12. That doesn't mean that happens, but that was his conversation with me.
Yeah, I don't think that you're right now in a point where you can be, you can hold old grudges or anything like that. If you're Colorado and you were mad about for some reason going to the leaving the Big 12, or you're the Big 12 and you're mad at Colorado, I think, look, it's all hands on deck right now to try to make this work because nobody knows where it's going. So, I think Colorado would fit nicely back in the Big 12. I wouldn't mind seeing it. They were good games at the time. I don't think that, outside of maybe financial gains that they made, football-wise, recruiting in California, look, they might have been able to recruit LA a little bit, but what's it done for them in the last decade? Colorado's kind of it's very much, they're not even an also-ran. They're kind of an afterthought, in that conference. So maybe coming back to the Big 12 might shoot some life into it. I don't know.
I mean, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about just Colorado joining the Big 12? Is that what you're commenting on, basically?
About that university,
Yeah, I mean, cool. They want to join the Big 12. I mean, I think the bigger picture right now is all of the other parts going on, not specifically them, because they're obviously a part of a group that's trying to figure things out right now. And they're not even the top part of that group. They're the second tier of that Pac-12 group alone. They're, like a lot of other people, wondering what's going to happen with Oregon and Washington. I think that's what a lot of people are wondering, but I think Oregon and Washington are also going to are wondering what's going on with Notre Dame. And I think a lot of people just in general are wondering what's going on. I don't think anybody has a truly great grasp. And if you go just by social media and you bounce from every rumor, every, quote unquote insider who is non-existent 99.9% of the time, but when realignment rolls around, they suddenly have every source known to man. It's weird how that works, but there's some of those folks, and if you follow all that stuff, then you'll go down some rabbit holes, man. You'll think all sorts of stuff is going on, and there clearly is a lot going on, but I don't think it's really much clearer today than it was yesterday. I think the Pac-12 is trying to do everything that it can to stay afloat as best they can. I think the alliance, which is funny to say, this new alliance, I guess, is attempting to try to become something that, helps the Pac-12 out and ultimately helps the ACC out. And the Big 12 is just sitting there in the middle fighting, trying to grab teams while they can and hoping that they can somehow stave off this alliance. That's kind of the lay of the land, it seems like right now. And, I still don't quite understand this new alliance thing. I don't get it at all. I think it's dumb, and I think it's a waste of time, and it's not an anti-Pac-12 or an anti-ACC thing. It's just I don't get it. I don't understand it, because why would the ACC help them to begin with?
Well, why? And again, how does it benefit you financially if it can't get you to the level of the other two?
Right.
Because if it doesn't do that, then you're wasting your time even doing it, because if you go to the television networks and say, okay, we're going to align the East Coast and the West Coast here, and these 10 and these 14, and have 24 teams and figure out a scheduling thing. What does that do for you? And that does $50 million for us.
Still not even a conference.
And they're not even, So
it's not. It's not the SEC. It's not the Big Ten stretching from coast to coast. It's two conferences joining up, where on one side you've got rumored to be at least a couple of teams who we know, if the SEC were to call, would bolt this new alliance in 0.2 seconds and be out of the door and not care one bit about what happens to everybody else. They would only be doing this because it's what they see as just their best option, I guess, until the SEC or the Big Ten call. That's the Pac-12 side. On the other side, you've got more teams than would actually be invited by both probably combined, who would be willing to jump out of any contract right now if they could to join any of those two conferences, whether that be Clemson, whether that be Florida State, whether that be Virginia Tech or Virginia or North Carolina, or half the league that's been mentioned as, SEC or Big Ten. The moment those teams, I feel like, get the call, they would bolt as well. So tell me, what is so you just come together to play bowl games, sort of championship game, which is really...
What would the championship game mean?
It's exactly... What is... You're the Tier 2 national champion?
No,
what is it?
Are you the ACC champion,
right,
or the Pac-12, or is this another game?
Right, that's what I would call a bowl game. What is the point of it? Is it just a bonus game that crowns the undisputed ACC Pac-12 champion of the world? What is that even? What is that? That's 2 of the 5 power conferences, or 4 if you even want to limit it to that, but there's still 5 at this time. So you're the 2/5 champ of the nation, or that's what I'm saying is what would the championship game even mean? What would it be for? Is it replacing another game? That's just the game alone, much less. And if you're not all contractually tied in and anybody can basically leave like we expect, then what's the point?
Here's what I didn't understand. Did you see the release where it says a loose partnership?
Yeah,
what the hell? Is that a replacing a loose alliance? It also might have been just kind of a delay tactic.
Loose partnership is exactly what it would be. That's the only thing they can guarantee. Plus, if you're trying to compete, and that's what you need to do to find the best, because you can't compete necessarily brand-wise because, one side is Pepsi and one side is Coke, and right now everybody else feels like maybe they're artsy cola right now. So you are trying to compete with those huge brands. You cannot go to them and say like, hey, I know that we'll have some good games. Like Oregon and Clemson will play occasionally, but how do you feel about Oregon State versus NC State? Not going to do anything for anybody.
No.
Hey, how do we feel about Washington State going to Wake Forest? I mean, those are not going to compete when the Big Ten says like, yeah, we're going to have USC and Ohio State.
Dude, I'm waiting for that Stanford BC basketball game midweek. That's going to be freaking sweet, man. No, I mean, like, and this is before the Pac-12 or the Pac-12 fans or the ACC fans come and jumping in the mentions. I'm not saying this with any disrespect. I'm just, like, if you know what this is supposed to be and why this is supposed to be a good idea, please explain it to me, because that's all I'm having a hard trouble with is just trying to figure out what this would actually do and why it would be cool and why it would make any sense and why it would really stave off anything, because I've had 24 hours now to look at it, and it just still does not make any sense to me as being some big game changer.
I would like to just see everyone not have any kind of statements at all.
That'd be good too.
But of course, we understand that's nearly impossible. Kansas State did receive a quarterback commitment, Avery Johnson, from Mays High School, the first number one prospect from in-state to pledge to the Wildcats since 2014. That happened earlier. Also, UCF landed brothers, four-star players, linebackers from Altamonte Springs in Florida, set to become their third highest-rated recruits ever to sign with UCF if they do. So that's pretty good news for Kansas State and also for UCF as well.
Yeah, and those are two schools that, I mean, if you're K-State, you're one of those that feels like it doesn't really matter what's going on around me. I just hope the Big 12 survives, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really your only option. And I don't know about UCF as far as that goes. I mean, you would think that they're pretty much in the same position, but there is that caveat of being a big school and being in a growing area. But, I mean, is that enough to get them into an ACC ultimately? They're not going to be allowed right now. I mean, maybe if all the Florida schools left, Paul, that ultimately they'd get an ACC deal, but that's like the only way. So they're kind of having to sit and wait, and they're just now pulling up the chair to the quote-unquote big table anyways. So, good for them to see the recruiting. I mean, K-State's going to be a team to watch this year. They really are. They're going to be fun with, Deuce Vaughn leading the charge. I'm excited to see Chris Kleiman's team out there, and excited to see how Malzahn tries to improve the Golden Knights a bit. But, good for them. Good to see them having success on the recruiting trail, and definitely two programs that are like all of us, wondering what's going on right now.
We need a break. Come back with Ross Dellenger, SI.com, to discuss his thoughts about what he has seen in the last few days. Andy Staples at 4. And one of the good things about Andy, he was also a part of a story he wrote about really what are the grant of rights. We've kind of discussed that. Paul had a homework assignment on that, and I ended up finding it. He's going to be a part of it, plus his thoughts as well. And Tim Brando always has some opinion about college football today at 425. So all of that, what's the UCLA angle after they're now announcing that they've announced that they're leaving with USC at 5 o'clock today. So a lot to get to. We appreciate your time. Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports, and Ross Dellenger is next with SI.com. Ideal MRI. It's a great place to find out a muscle or ligament that might be injured, might be severely hurt, like torn. If it is, that's too bad, because that means you have pain somewhere. It could be your shoulder, could be your back somewhere, could be in your leg, your knee, your quad, whatever. And who knows? It's so bad that you cannot function, you cannot sleep, you cannot really do anything because it hurts so much. And so, IdealMRI.com offers you two things. The only two things that really matter, in my opinion, is when you get an MRI, find out what is wrong with you, and then on number two, save as much money as you can, and they do. $1,100 is the average MRI. Theirs is $497 or less every single time. Never more, but can be less. IdealMRI.com.
The 4th of July sales event is going on now at Allen Samuels in Waco. The new 2022 impressive Wagoneer Series 2 and 3 have 2.9% for 72 months, plus $4,000 competitive bonus cash. That's right, and $4,000 bonus cash. This incentive on the new 2022 Wagoneers for a limited time only at Allen Samuels in Waco. First responders get $500 extra cash. Come shop the huge new car and truck inventory today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Arturo Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott, covering Conroe and Houston, 936-756-7717 or cam.heathcott@edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
You know what would make this moment better? Pizza. Dough made from scratch and an Italian family sauce recipe pizza. 3 fresh signature cheeses making a melty blanket of perfection pizza. Like loads of premium toppings like crispy Old World pepperoni, savory Italian sausage, and fresh sliced veggies pizza. That's Marco's Pizza. Visit marcos.com and make any moment better. And with 4 locations in Waco, Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and soon to open in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
You know, one of the things about last week when the news started to pop, USC, UCLA, and others, there's a lot of people that use that end of last week, into 4th of July, even into this week as a chance to get away. I know some administrators at Baylor that were on vacation, a couple of big bangers, and of course they had to get that somewhat, at least a little bit interrupted, if not a lot. And Ross Dellenger, who joins us quite a bit, SI.com, on July 1st, a picture of somewhere really nice in a boat with water. Please, no news. Ross joins us on 365 Sports. That worked out for you, huh?
Well, I tell you, I walked into my Destin, Florida condo. I was there for about 5 minutes last Thursday when I got the text about USC and UCLA. So the day one of my vacation was pretty much ruined. But I did get Friday, Saturday, Sunday with actually fairly little news. So that was good. But Thursday was completely ruined.
So, to you, what was more explosive? Texas OU a year ago, which was, of course, was a bombshell, or this one coming out with USC and UCLA 11 months later?
This one probably was a little more stunning for a few reasons. Number one, I think that just geographically and culturally, it was surprising that two California schools, urban LA schools, would go to a conference with a Midwest and a little bit upper Eastern Atlantic footprint. It just didn't seem that it fit, but as we all have come to know, it doesn't matter. Fit and geographic fit and cultural fit don't matter these days, but it was still stunning to see. And then the fact that this was kept as quiet as it was into the very end. We remember Oklahoma and Texas was kept quiet as well, but they had a few more weeks left of approvals and stuff like that. This was leaked the actual day, right, that it was approved, basically. And I think it was scheduled to be approved around that, if not that day, then that week or so. So it was shocking how it was really kept quiet until the day it happened. It broke that afternoon around lunch, and presidents approved it that night. They had a meeting the night before, Wednesday night, to kind of informally approve it, with like a straw poll of some sort, I believe. So it was crazy how quiet that was kept. So this one probably was a little more surprising for those two reasons. Just the fit of two LA schools in the Big Ten, and then how it was kept quiet up until the actual day it happened.
Ross, do you think that the SEC or Big Ten have an actual end game here, or is it collect as many valuable pieces as you can and work out the details later? Because even if they do have an end game, to not expect pushback from everybody you screwed over would kind of be naive.
Well, I don't know that there's an end game. I know that to add teams, you've got to add value, right? You're going to add a team, you're going to split your TV revenue distribution another way. So you have 16 teams and you have two more, you're splitting it 18 ways instead of 16. So that pie is cut up two more pieces, and everybody gets, less than they had gotten before you added those two teams, unless those two teams bring enough value to increase the yearly revenue, to increase the whole pie. So what teams out there that are not part of the Big Ten in the SEC right now, what teams increase the value of those two conferences, where when you split annual distribution up every year, the amount would go up even with adding teams? There are not very many out there, right? The list is probably like 4 to 6 teams. If you think about it, some would say, Clemson because of football, and North Carolina, and maybe even Duke with basketball, and potentially like a Florida State. And then you look west at like Oregon. Maybe because of basketball, you'd say like a Kansas. But outside of that, I don't know what teams out there, instead of those 4 to 6 teams, that the Big Ten and SEC would say, oh yeah, we want them because we'll cut up the pie a little more, but they'll add more to the pie. It's getting to a point where you just don't have a lot of value out there with everybody left.
What are your thoughts, Ross, on the alliance that's been talked about? No, not the one that's already died, that went away once the Big Ten poached the LA schools, but the new one with the Pac-12 and the ACC that's been debated about, I guess, over the last 24 hours in particular, whether that be scheduling or, whatever else has been thrown out there, like a championship game of some sort. How much smoke do you think there is to that, and how legitimate do you think that option is? What would it even mean in the long run?
Yeah, this is typical of this time. I call it the conference realignment silly season. It's kind of like coaching silly season. It's hard to believe a lot of what you read because things are so fluid and they change and so much stuff is being talked about. And that's another thing, I do think that is real. I think there's something there. However, the reporting on it, which has been just by a couple of outlets, has been hardly no details. I mean, There's just been no specifics, no details. It's just like partnership with ACC and Pac-12 might include a few games played and might involve ESPN, and maybe there's some kind of game between their champions. Like, that's it. I mean, it's just literally like, a couple of stories were like 3 sentences of details on it. It just, there's not much there. So I'm curious, and I may or may not have been, exploring this myself the last couple of days, trying to get more details and specifics on this, because I do think it's real. I do think it involves ESPN heavy in the ACC network. But I don't know if it's a legitimate option, because there's so many out there. There's so much being discussed that, is this real? Number one. And number two, what are the details? And I'm hesitant myself to believe anything or report anything myself without more detail and exactly what this is, and is this a legitimate option? I know, it has been discussed. I think it has been discussed by certain people in those leagues at length, but it does seem to be kind of in its infancy. And so, I don't, like I said, these days it's hard to parse through just, hey, is this being flung out there because it was mentioned on a call once, or is this being vetted? Is this a real thing? It's tough right now. And the same thing goes for the Big 12 teams being, Big 12 being aggressive with Pac-12. Well, I mean, there's a lot of reporting out there and from reputable people that the Big 12 is being aggressive and is in serious or deep talks. I'll be honest, I haven't heard that. And I think they're being aggressive. I do, or they want to be aggressive. But I think a lot of this is coming from one side. There's a lot of wishful thinking in the Big 12 that they can get some of these teams. And I'll be honest, Pac-12 sources, at least that I've spoken with, don't think that that's real. And I think a lot of them have balked at the deep or serious negotiations or talks. I don't know that that's really happening. I think the Big 12 wants to be aggressive, and it is being aggressive, but is it being reciprocated? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, you could want something or like to, date somebody, but that doesn't mean they want to do it the other way around either. You got to have a two-way street.
Well, and like you said, a lot of people could be being used, to put something out there to see what the reaction is, and all that. You got to. There's an agenda potentially with everything that's out there. Yeah.
Every time something like this happens, we hear about, my God, it's about to change everything, and obviously a lot of things have changed in the last 10, 20 years. Actually, even back at Arkansas left the Southwest Conference, even before the Big 12 was formed. Ross, what do you honestly believe might be the timeline of, let's say there ends up being this mega conference championship? Is this going to be at the end of the current college football contract, the championship contract? Do we think that is everyone thinking it's coming in 2 or 3 years when it still might be 5 or 10 years down the road?
Just like you're talking about an overall new, like
if the Big Ten and the SEC end up having their own special little league, it doesn't seem like this is like imminent. It may happen, but I can't imagine that happening too quickly.
Yeah, I can't imagine it either. It doesn't feel imminent, but you know what? This whole realignment wave didn't feel imminent either. I think the USC, UCLA stuff really shocked people at how quickly that happened. I feel like a lot of people within college sports realized teams were trying to bolt to get to the 2 richest leagues, Big Ten and SEC. The fact that they would do it already so soon, Texas, Oklahoma, and now USC, UCLA, we are heading toward what many predicted, year, 2 years, 5 years ago, even some 10 years ago, that there were going to be, a group of 35 to 40 teams separating itself from the rest, potentially in 2 conferences. And it does feel like that has been expedited. and it's escalating pretty quickly. So I hesitate to say that we're a long way away from some kind of 2-conference 35-team championship game or playoff just between them. Maybe it's some kind of semi-pro model. Maybe they're in some kind of semi-pro model. People have suggested that. It seems like that's a ways away, but then again, everything does seem like it's being sped up. And we got to keep in mind there's no contract for a new playoff after 2025. Yeah. So it's kind of still out there in the wind, flapping. We don't have a playoff format set, and that is something that I think makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And if you are going to do some kind of alternate championship between these two leagues or something, well, it seems more realistic now that there's not even anything on the books after 2025.
Ross, what fans of college football asked for this? Because I can't think
yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that you might find some fans in the Big Ten and SEC that are excited about their position moving forward, but I think overall, the college football fan probably is not pleased at how this is going. I think in sports, a lot of us love parody, and I know college football hasn't really ever had parody, but it's clearly whatever parody there was, right, is being zapped with every move that we've seen over the last year or two. So it's we're evolving. As I mentioned, I think it does feel like we're evolving into a minor league of a small group of teams that can maybe afford to actually pay players, and it's going to be different. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad, but it's certainly going to be different, and it's going to take a long time for a lot of people to adjust to it.
You put some holes in some of the scuttlebutt there online of just all the talk that you mentioned, especially with the Big 12 and being aggressive and all that. What is actually the legitimate deal with the ACC and the grant of rights, Ross? Because that's another one of those things that everybody's screaming about is, Clemson's going to go to the SEC and, this team's going to the Big Ten. What is actually the case there? What can be done? And is there a movement where teams could get out potentially earlier?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, you talk to people in the ACC, they feel pretty bound to this grant of rights that extends to 2036, and it's a TV deal that isn't great. It's certainly suboptimal. And I think that there have been lawyers that probably have studied that grant of rights, and just like the Texas-Oklahoma, right? They can't get out, right? They've studied it and they can't get out early unless there's some kind of agreement. And I think that's probably the case for the ACC as well. It's going to be hard to get out of that, and they're kind of bound to that. And I don't know if somebody. I think the big there are a couple of things that have been just kind of thrown at me about how they could break out of it. Number one is that enough teams leave the ACC, then maybe it becomes non-existent. I don't know if a certain amount of teams, if they were to leave or break it, then is there even a conference? And if there's not really a conference, then there's not a grant of rights. I think the other thing involves Notre Dame, which is kind of the big domino here. I think a lot of people are talking about the Big 12 aggressive and poaching Pac-12 and this ACC Pac-12 stuff, but really the thing we should be talking about in Pat Forty, my colleague, wrote a column about it on Monday after talking to some folks in South Bend, is what does Notre Dame do? And I think Notre Dame does pull out of the ACC, which they're a member of for everything except football. Does that open the door for other teams to leave the ACC? I think that's a good question. And there's the last domino, I think, or the next domino, I should say. Does Notre Dame finally agree to be in a conference? Do they go to the Big Ten, which is one of them, I think, for years? And ACC does want them as well. But right now, because of money and the situation we're in, they've probably never had more pressure, Notre Dame, in joining a conference, and in this case, the Big Ten, because of the money and the situation. So certainly one to watch, and I think that probably what Notre Dame does, and I don't think they're in a rush, that probably informs a little better of what, if anything, the SEC does, and what happens in the Pac-12, specifically Washington and Oregon. So Notre Dame is a domino for sure, and we should all keep our eyes on that.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate your time as always. Ross Dellenger, SI.com, with us numerous times throughout, of course, what we do on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. We'll have Andy Staples on a couple of things, including an article he was a part of in which he kind of broke down the ACC and really all grant of rights when it comes to conferences. That ACC almost written, not quite verbatim, but very similar to what they have with the Big 12 as well.
I think a lot of ground was covered there. I mean, a lot of like clearing of the air. And I think a lot of people probably feel like they just got a bucket of ice water dumped on them if they were, running with every rumor that was out there. We just kind of debunked a lot of those, or at least cut them off at the head. It's not going to be, tomorrow we get a decision from Notre Dame and then that shifts everything. I mean, this is going to – I think the question is how long this drags out, and this is probably going to be something I would imagine that we're talking about during the season on occasion, and certainly next off season, and until everybody finally feels like they're in a settled spot and we know what that future is actually supposed to be, then this is just going to continue on.
Yeah. The Notre Dame thing is interesting because I think a lot of people think that Notre Dame would be excited to do something and change and all that. Well, they haven't been made to in their entire existence. So just because something happened that could seismically shift things doesn't mean they have to do anything right away. Plus,
or that they can seismically shift something.
Yeah, but the other thing about Notre Dame is they don't have to be on anyone's timeline but theirs, because they are – the Big Ten's never going to change their mind on Notre Dame. They're not going to say, Notre Dame, call us back by midnight or you're out. I mean, Notre Dame can sit there for as long as it takes for them to make that decision. If the rules at Notre Dame were 100% of the board has to say yes, they could wait out until the guy who was saying no died and replaced him with somebody who'd say yes, and they'd still get the invite.
Yeah, I've seen that. Some scuttlebutt, just people talking, just all over social media, all over message boards and everything. And there's some small fraction that thinks that somehow there's leverage against Notre Dame because it's you better join soon or it's not going to be there. And I'm with you. It's like you're going to tell them no if they 2 years from now decide hey, Big Ten, we want to join. The Big Ten's going to suddenly tell them no because they spurned them 2 years ago? I don't think so. I think that they're going to be pretty much able to walk in whenever they want, wherever they want.
Look, the ACC has one that's definitely held out for them, hoping against hope, but it's not going to happen, even though I think they technically have some sort of right of first refusal in the contract. But every conference, every single one, if Notre Dame called up and said, do you have a seat at the table for us, would dust off a chair and be like, we've been sitting here for years.
They'd save the pack right now.
Yeah.
By simply deciding to go there. And Kliavkoff would go from, Bob Bowlesby 2.0 basically to the biggest genius of all time. It's you lost the two LSU, but you got Notre Dame freaking back and you saved the, anybody who lands them would be the king of commissioners for a day.
Yeah, including the two big boys. Whoever gets them, that's just another big nugget that they have in their arsenal. By the way, behind us, there are some of you that noticed we have Florida Gators. A package came in. Jack McKenzie has been reaching out to numerous college programs around the country. Paul Catalina helped secure that one. Florida Gators, there it is. The helmet, the football, the basketball signed by Billy Donovan.
It just feels better in here today, doesn't it? It just feels a little more elite.
Look, I can tell you, and the way I've described it to people is, since he put that back there, I feel like there's a spider on my back.
I get it.
Better than a gator.
And by the way, yes, I will also tell you that the Texas and OU helmets behind us, which, yes, we play fair. Jack also is the one that sets a helmet up order every single day on this particular show. We'll have Iowa State very soon, UCF very soon, among others as well. And some of you who are our listeners and audience, those who view the show, have sent us helmets as well. We appreciate you for that. And again, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports takes you all the way up until 6. We'll have Andy Staples here very, very soon. There is one NFL note from today that will drop in along with getting back to you in your chat, and also the text line, which is 254-339-1122, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, the people that you can count on. I had my car over at Richard Carr, Karr, just a couple of weeks ago. I had gotten into a little accident where some debris had flown up. It knocked loose my side mirror. It's just ugly, scratched up, all that. Well, I got over to Richard Carr. They accommodated me when the rental car place suddenly didn't have a rental car available. I called Donnie over Richard Carr, told him the situation. Don't worry about it, man. Bring it in tomorrow. It'll be all good. And had a couple of other bumps in the road, but it was made as smooth a ride as possible thanks to the good folks over at Richard Carr. Second time I've had to deal with them as far as getting a car repaired here in the last year and a half or so, but both times have been in and out, no problem, and they've gotten it back to me very quickly. And that's just the customer service side. They're also and mostly in the business of selling cars, and weekly right now they are seeing new cars and trucks arriving. You can call the dealership or go online for their current inventory. You can go by the dealership to buy or build your perfect vehicle and talk to the great people over there, and you can get your name on the inbound vehicle list. And what that means is we all know, anybody that's tried to buy a car here lately or looked at just the prices of cars, that new cars are hard to come by. And part of the reason why is supply chain issues and microchip shortages and all that jazz. Well, the quickest way that Richard Carr can get you into new cars, they try to help you out with that, is to get your name on their inbound vehicle list, get the vehicle that you want set up so as soon as it arrives, you will be first in line, so to speak, to get into that new vehicle. So the sooner you sign up, the sooner that car arrives, and the sooner you're in a brand new car. All you have to do is contact them over the phone or go by the dealership to get your name on that inbound vehicle list. But if you need a car today, well, they have dozens of quality pre-owned cars and trucks. All of them have undergone a 172-point inspection, so you can drive them with peace of mind, and they will pay top dollar on your trade with dozens of lending options. Richard Carr likes to say yes to loans when others say no, so go online or go by the dealership to check out their inventory. Trust the good local people you can count on here in Central Texas for over 23 years, run by proud Wacoans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
It's plain and simple. Waco Custom Marketplace is the one-stop shop for what you need for tailgating, from charcoal, cold beer, and wine. And, of course, customize your order with brisket, tri-tip, sausage, wings, smoked pork tenderloin, country-style or pork spare ribs, marinated beef and chicken fajita meat, ground beef and chili, meat, hot dogs, and burgers, buns, seasoning, sauces, chips. There's fresh baked bread and kolaches every day, breakfast sausage links. And you can also customize your favorite cut of steaks from Select, Choice, or Prime, bacon wrap fillets, ribeyes, New York strips, sirloin, T-bone, and porterhouse. Full service butcher shop includes pork, poultry, beef, chicken, and seafood, serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. Your one-stop shop for beef, pork, poultry, and seafood needs. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Are you a Sikkim 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
There was one NFL note from the day that is mentioned. Baker Mayfield, the Panthers agreeing to trade for the Browns quarterback. And with that deal, I saw this from an NFL writer. The Carolina Panthers quarterback room is Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and Matt Corral, the kid from a young man from Ole Miss. They have now given up a second-round pick, a third-round pick, a fifth-round pick, a sixth-round pick, and 2 fourth-round picks for Darnold, Mayfield, and Matt Corral. That's a lot of picks.
Man, there's just sometimes,
and they still don't know if they have the answer.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is they still might not, and it's just wild. I mean, there's a few different thoughts that go through my head of like, man, that's an all-star quarterback cast if you're talking college football. If you're talking NFL, it's a little bit more off the radar. But yeah, that's been problematic for them trying to find the right quarterback, and I just hate it for Matt Rule because it's been so rocky. I hate it for Baker Mayfield because obviously his star has fallen dramatically, and now they're basically linking up, and they're going to have to save each other in so many ways.
You know, here's what I think is unfair to Baker Mayfield. I think the Colin Cowherd backwards hat criticism stuff is so silly.
So lame.
It's so silly. I do think that, like, yeah, I'm sure Baker is. I mean, he can maybe rub some people the wrong way that don't get his whole vibe.
Yeah,
but I don't think
that there's a radio dude that's just like loving that he's like, I just think that's BS, dude. That's so garbage.
But I will say this: the guy played last year with a busted up, non-throwing shoulder, which he was in a lot of pain. So even though it's not his throwing shoulder, throwing's all about balance, and he can only pick his arm up to about here. So how many times do you see quarterbacks just, throwing with one arm? There's fundamentals he wasn't able to do. I think he will be fine if he's healthy and they have him in the right system in Carolina. But to say a guy who played 6-7 games through a really tough injury last year is somehow garbage because the team that he was employed by didn't have any other options and he was trying to be tough and help them win just a year after his best career year, to say that he's done already to me is silly.
I think that his personality, I think we as people sometimes attach ourselves one way or another, positively or negatively, to personalities. And I've tried to start doing this, is not comment on somebody just because of what I might have read or maybe what you hear as reporting, and because we don't get to meet most of them, we get to meet a lot of them. But I do think his personality, it's being edgy, he's cocky, arrogant at times, and that's just who he is. You want him to be somebody else, that's not who he is. And I think because of that, sometimes then people look at him differently.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unfair media coverage for a lot of people, and that's a great way to approach it because that's the opposite of the way a lot of media is approaching everything now. They got to paint people a certain way or paint them to be this type of person or that type of whatever. And yeah, I think Baker Mayfield never really changed along the way. I think he was pretty much just always who he was, and just some people got an axe to grind, and man, they drove that bad boy home over and over and over again, and he just was at the mercy of it almost because he couldn't respond with his play and counteract what they were saying, and they just kept swinging away, and now he's in a position where it's July 6th and he's just now on a team that we know he's going to play for next year. So, yeah, it's crazy to see that.
Okay, and he was the number 1 overall pick. So that's a tag that you deal with that too, expectations fair or not.
I'll just tell you, people can be mad because he's a smartass all they want, but Deshaun Watson, before we knew all this, was, God, you want him to come and talk to your church group.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes what our perception of what reality is isn't true. So, again, Baker Mayfield's a smartass, but the Browns have just gone all in on a guy who may never play for them. Honestly, may never play for them given the situation that he's in. Now, he probably will, but there's a scenario out there where Deshaun Watson's done. And the Browns got rid of Baker Mayfield because he's sarcastic.
This is a graphic I just happened to see. I like to throw these up on occasion as far as some college football. Since 2000, these are the schools with the most 10 wins or more seasons. Since 2000, that was the year, by the way, Oklahoma won the national championship. It seemed like it was just around the corner, but it's been 20 years now, 22 years. But these are the schools. I get this in the email. I get an email to blitzsports.com. It's very informative. Most of it's historical standings and stuff like that, but I like it. And if you don't get it, it's something to think about. Oklahoma, in 22 years, I guess that would be, 21 or 22 years, has won 10 games 18 times or more. Then you see all the schools. There's Boise State, who's had their nice run. Appalachian State there at 12. TCU. And yes, they've struggled recently, but man, they had that run when they were not yet a part of the Big 12, and then of course they've had some nice runs since that time. Most of those schools, Sam Houston State, who's moving up into what they're doing after getting out of the Southland Conference, and then whatever is a part of the conference that's what the Mountain West or whatever. Texas, now Texas has 10, and they're on this list at 10. Wisconsin and 9 of the 10-win seasons were from 2000 to 2009, which, of course, they won a national championship in 2005, played for one and lost in 2009, and almost played one in 2008.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. It's totally believable. I mean, during the 2000s, the aughts, I guess is what you call it, right? The aughts, they were, one of the premier teams, one of the top 1, 2, 3, depending on, what year you're talking about, but typically them, USC always in that mix, Oklahoma very heavily in that mix as well, and that was the whole onslaught of the SEC. That's when all of that began, was right around 2001, and then moving past that. Once LSU beat Oklahoma and kind of cut that Oklahoma run off at the head, and then they kept getting back but couldn't win, the USC tears them up the following year, and then just if you look since that moment, really, since LSU beat Oklahoma, that's the start of the whole SEC uprising or whatever you want to call it. But, yeah, I mean, Texas in those 2000s, they were constantly knocking on the door, and it just goes to show you that, everybody makes the joke about they're back or whatever, and maybe they finally are. I mean, this is like the 10th offseason in a row where I've probably said that, but it has been a long drought. When you look up and you keep saying, well, it's a short thing. It'll be next year. Well, next year all of a sudden is like 15 years long, and you realize, like, holy cow. But what would the 10 be? That Sugar Bowl year, I guess, with Ellinger?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been the only non-2000s one. But, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would have probably picked most of those, I think. And, just interesting to see that, although we do know that winning is not really number one. So anybody seeing that graphic and go, that's why Boise should be in the pack, that's not really going to help them too much.
Oh, yeah. And look, it also shows you how hard it is to have 10-win seasons at all.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're really good, you can have 9-3. Look at Clemson. Have 9 and well, I guess I get probably 10 with a bowl game, but you look at it 9-3 and maybe you lose the bowl game. It's hard. It can get away from you real fast. You can have it 8-4 because you lost it, a bunch of offensive linemen, and then your streak of 10-win seasons is over, or you could be like Texas A&M and have 1 and then get kind of perpetually stuck in winning 8 games all the time. It's hard to do. And the fact that Oklahoma's done it 18 times.
That's ridiculous.
And 18 times, and much to the chagrin of their fans, have only one title to show for it.
Well, they always seemed like they blanked the bed in the big moment in the playoffs, except the Georgia game. And even then, they had the lead and blew it in the second half.
It was worse before that, though. Yeah. It was the LSU game that they went in way too cocky and confident. And LSU just came out, punched them in the mouth. I believe that game was in New Orleans, if I remember correctly. And it was a low-scoring game. It was like, 21-14 or something? And they tried to, they made a run at the – so that got away. That's one that you go, probably should have won that one in hindsight. And then USC, all that build-up. And that buildup was really reserved and finally made whole with the Texas game. with USC and Texas. That buildup was more suiting of that game because the buildup for Oklahoma and USC I remember being massive, and then Mark Bradley fumbles that return, and it was just flash flood after that. I mean, it was all Trojans after that bad boy, and that was a blowout game. But yeah, I mean, they had a couple of those games, and then knock on the door in the playoff, like you said, and just can't get over that hump for whatever reason. Bob Stoops wasn't able to do it. Lincoln Riley couldn't break through, and now we'll see if Brent Venables can. That's why he's been hired.
I want to read this text, and we have the text line that's constantly going, and then we have, of course, more to come in the 4
o'clock
also
hour. Florida butt kicking.
Yeah.
Hernandez and Tebow and all those cats just beat the dog mess out of them.
Knock on the door. Florida State for years, Paul, were so close. Nebraska, even after their first two in the 60, 70, 71, then they got close so many times, and they just couldn't. But you keep knocking on the door. You never know. A Clemson all of a sudden runs off a few, and sometimes that happens. From the 714, this is a UCLA fan who sent this, I guess, yesterday evening or this morning. I think it's becoming more and more clear for Oregon fans. This is his opinion. Specifically, UCLA was invited with USC because my Bruins aren't a real threat to the Trojans' recruiting juggernaut. Oregon, on the other hand, playing in the same conference gives them the ability to put recruiting in Southern California. I think it's the most important thing for UCLA, USC moving forward to have a monopoly on the Big Ten on the West Coast, or their so-called West Coast. You can't afford to wait. Waiting will devastate recruiting alumni support. I don't think waiting around for a bigger brand is an option. You either make your move prior or you're just going to have to react, and I think he's kind of discussing those being left behind right now in the Pac-12. That's
the whole, at least idea that, Washington and Oregon have to wait on Notre Dame, and then the Big Ten will decide who they want to let in next. So, yeah, if they have to wait, but then again, I do think that, they might be waiting a little bit, but if your brand is strong enough, if you're one of the 6 to 8, I mean, Ross Dellenger said 4, but I think there's 6 to 8 teams that could wait around, although it could be to their detriment for a long time, could wait around for a little bit, and then if expansion comes around, if they offer, they can go. I mean, the idea of them probably not going anywhere unless the whole idea is to crater all non-brands in this and then not
That's what I'm
else.
Confused about because, right now, you look at who would be legitimate if you just stripped away grant of rights. I mean, there's at least 4 you would think in the ACC that would be poached, and then, Oregon, Washington ultimately. But you hear people like Ross or like us talking about it, and it's like, oh, well, there's only 5 or 6 teams would be added. But then you ultimately hear them also say, I don't know if this thing grows to 50 or 60. Well, if it's 50 or 60, there's a bunch more teams that need to be added ultimately. Yeah. So what is that going to be? Is this going to be a first, let's see what happens with Notre Dame, and then Oregon, Washington's decision is affected by that. And then there's the ACC grant of rights, which nobody's found a way to get around that just yet. So if that's in play to 2036, obviously that changes everything dramatically. But if it's not, let's say, and you're able to scoop 4 or 6 teams from there, and then you're probably both conferences are at 26, 28-ish teams. So you're looking at 56 teams. Does that about get it done? Or are there maybe, a few remnants from the remaining Big 12 at that point, or the remaining Pac at that point, or the remaining whoever? I'm very curious of what the club's going to be, what the size of it ultimately is going to be, and how that's going to work.
We will have Andy Staples on to maybe help answer some of those questions and his thoughts about many things college football. Tim Brando always brings his truth serum and fire at 4:25. We're not done. We'll check in with UCLA writer Ben Bolch at 5, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street in Waco, a hidden gem, and it's not so hidden if you're on DoorDash. I mean, even if you didn't really know about it and wanted to make an order on DoorDash for some beer, some liquor, they can do that for you, and they're available on DoorDash. But you could pop into the store and look at their great selection of craft beers, which it's the summertime. They've got some great stuff in there now. They've got the locally sourced Texas whiskeys there. They have all kind of whiskeys, but they're really experts in the locally sourced stuff. When you talk about Garrison Brothers, TX, Balcones has a ZZ Top whiskey that's out right now. They've got that on their shelves at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank. Find them on Instagram or on DoorDash.
Payments for qualified buyers are 2.9% for 72 with 5,000 down cash or trade. TTLX or see dealer for details. Step up your ride at Richard Carr's Summer Savings Event. Find summer savings like a 2018 GMC Sierra SLT, only $432 a month, or a 2017 Buick Encore for $183 a month, or GMC Acadia for only $280 a month. Our vehicles go through a 172-point inspection. We pay top dollar for your trade, and 100% approval is always our goal. Find your next car or truck today at Richard Carr.
At Richard Carr, we give you more.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Did you know that Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness is a partner of the City of Waco? Did you know that we are open to the public? Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers day passes to the public for only $10 a day, and we offer money-saving memberships. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including bar, yoga, boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. There are free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, elliptical machines, and much more on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training available where you can be encouraged to grow. Sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. 17 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Waco's premier experience where you can help your mind, body, and soul. Visit our website at wacotennis.com. Call us at 254-753-7675 or visit us next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
Jet motion they go with here with Baldwin. And Baldwin breaks free. And the Bears, Sikkim, Monterey Baldwin.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
4 o'clock hour continues, starts, and we start with a great friend of the show, Andy Staples, theathletic.com, joins us with Paul Catalina, Craig, and David Smoak. Andy, thank you for your time. Your thoughts about what is the next part of what we saw that began last Thursday with UCLA and USC. Do you feel like there's going to be kind of a pause for a while, or do you think something else happens in the next, let's say, 2 or 3 months?
Well, I think it depends on Notre Dame. I think if Notre Dame decides that this is the time that they have to join a conference in football, then they're going to pick one and join it, and then all the other dominoes will fall. But really, it seems like the Big Ten is waiting to hear from them to see if they want to do anything else. And I don't know that the SEC does anything else if the Big Ten doesn't do anything else. So it's one of those things where Notre Dame can say, they don't have to say no. They're allowed to say not now. Nobody else really has that freedom, but they could say not now, and then everybody kind of moves on with their business. And I think that's important because if they say yes, then we know what the Big Ten's going to do. They're going to go ahead and move on with whatever their master plan would be if they get Notre Dame. And we find out whether that includes Oregon and Washington. Because what happens with the Pac-12 and Big 12, I think, depends largely on whether Oregon and Washington remain members of the Pac-12.
Andy, what do you think say Notre Dame makes everybody wait? Do you think then we're in a holding pattern, or do you think that the Big 12 stays aggressive and the ACC tries to figure out a way to increase their value while rating the Pac-12?
Well, the ACC is going to try to figure out a way to increase their value. I don't know that rating the Pac-12 makes any sense at all for them. I mean, I realize the Big Ten now stretches from coast to coast. The Big 12 basically stretches from coast to coast. But having a bunch of schools on the Eastern Seaboard and a bunch on the West Coast does not make much sense. Also, casting your lot with the ACC and let them get a new TV deal is not really worth it. And the problem for the ACC is if they can get a new TV deal, that probably breaks their grant of rights. You're going to lose Clemson to the SEC. North Carolina is going to pick the Big Ten or the SEC. Virginia is going to pick the Big Ten or the SEC. Maybe Florida State goes to the SEC. So they've got to be really careful with what they do. If I were the Big 12 right now, here's what I'd do. I would go to Oregon and Washington, and I would say, you can join us, and we won't make you sign anything. You can leave anytime you want. Because that's the thing the Pac-12 won't do. They're going to say, you need to commit to us for a period of years and say that we're going to be together. If the Big 12 could say, we don't care if you commit to us, we'll take you.
It's very interesting.
They could probably get everything they want out of that.
I haven't heard anyone ever say that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So and you don't lose if you're the Big 12. You gain them for a year or 3 or 4 or maybe longer. You continue to stabilize yourself, and maybe others want to come with them.
Yeah, because that eliminates the threat, and that turns. Let's be honest. If the Big 12 has a TV deal that has that bunch in there, that let's say Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Utah, Arizona State. Well, they're going to have. It's a really good league, and I bet it makes more per school than the ACC.
Andy Staples, athletic.com with us, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports.
Andy, I know it's been a few days now, and the writing for the moves that we're seeing, whether it be Oklahoma or Texas or the LA schools, has been, rumored about. The writing's been on the wall, so to speak, for a little while. But to actually see it happen was still pretty nuts. What was your initial reaction when you saw that the news drop about USC and UCLA?
Wow, they really did it. Somebody actually took one of my stupid ideas. I wrote a story about 2 days after Oklahoma and Texas said they were going to the SEC, saying the Big Ten needs to raid the Pac-12. That's the next logical move. Now, I said they would go for half the league because they could create kind of a mini division over there, and you could play all the Olympic sports where you could have that just be a 16 mini conference for Olympic sports. They clearly saw it more as just take the best pieces and then go. Now, I would argue that Oregon and Washington are good enough pieces to Big Ten, but I think they're looking at it where if they can get Notre Dame, they may want to go south and they want to try and see if they can get some of those ACC schools, because then they could really be a truly nationwide conference.
Andy, that brings me to the article. You and Richard Deitch, I saw that earlier, and you had also done an article about the grant of rights and how hard it is to get out of it, how it's written, how the ACC and the Big 12 is almost not quite verbatim, but very much close to copy and paste. You hear that the ACC will try to get some in the ACC. If they're going to leave, they have to get through it. What you learned, is that not impossible, but will be incredibly difficult?
It's not impossible, and we'll see how difficult it is. Because if everybody wants to change, then it's not difficult at all. It's if you've got more than half of the people that don't want it to change, then you've got some problems. But anything that causes a fundamental change in the identity of the league is going to make some school feel like they've got an out. And it's interesting because I keep thinking back to Texas and Oklahoma and how quiet they were when they, because normally you hear stuff behind the scenes where people say, oh, don't worry, we'll be out of here by 2023 or whatever. You didn't hear that at all. Even off the record, those people were like, no, we may have to stay till 2025. It's okay. We'll deal with it. But I think they thought this was going to happen. And so let's back up to that scenario I just laid out. Let's say the Big 12 gets aggressive and those Pac-12 schools say yes. If you're the Big 12, you're going to go to Fox and ESPN and say, hey, their contract was going to end. They're not governed by any TV contract at all right now. How about we just renegotiate a new deal? And it all starts in 2024. And guess what? If that happens, the grant of rights falls apart because it's tied to the TV contract, and Texas and Oklahoma are free to go to the SEC.
That would seem to be the only way the Big 12 would have to let them out so they could immediately replace the revenue.
There'd be no letting them out because they would be willingly walking away from the deal.
And you're saying that you think that they've kind of had this plan in mind, potentially?
I don't know if they had it in mind. I think it was more they were expecting further chaos. I
agree with you, man. I was saying this just last week. I feel like there's been another plan in place, and I think that you just nailed that plan. Just something just with Oklahoma and Texas and the whole, like, everybody's saying there's no way they stay until 20. I think there's always been some sort of idea of how they could get around that, and I think you just nailed it.
Well, and there's another way, too, and it just involves money. Like, you say for this season and next, and then as you go into 2024, you say, listen, we have 1 year left on this deal. Here's how much you guys would make in that 1 year. What if we gave you an X dollar amount that is X dollars more than that amount? Would that be reasonable? Would you like to make more money than less? And you know what they're going to say in that case? Yes, we would.
Yeah. No, they probably would, although they were angry back in the fall. They probably would have said no to that as well. Man, your idea about Washington and Oregon on our chat room and our YouTube channel is like everybody's like, want you to run for president.
But nobody wants to do that because everybody wants to act like these are 100-year marriages.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What has the past 100 years of college football taught us? They're not. So just admit that, deal with reality on reality's terms. And, oh, by the way, a commissioner who has no experience in this world, who's worked in pro sports and in entertainment, might be a little more open to something like that because they don't look at conference affiliation as something sacred.
Andy, I want to go back to the ACC real quick because they signed a grant of rights kind of, I mean, I know some of their lawsuits will say under duress because of, teams leaving. They lost Rutgers and Maryland and lost Maryland and not Rutgers, but they were trying to lock everything in. And it was clearly now it's very short-sighted to sign, a 20-year grant of rights.
If they say someone was holding a gun to their head, they're lying.
Yeah.
They were holding it themselves. They were the ones who wanted this. That's the one thing. I don't have as much sympathy for these ACC schools because this is exactly what they wanted. And now it's biting them in the butt.
Yeah. But if you're Clemson and you've gone toe-to-toe with Alabama recently and you've won national titles and you can see the income chasm growing even larger. If you're Florida State and your big rival in-states always had more money than you, but you were able for a long time to counteract that, but now, again, it's growing further and you're kind of stuck in the mud. Like, how long do you want to sit around and wait for this before you cause chaos in your own league yourself?
It's already happening because there's a group of those schools and the way the people at those schools will tell it is they're tired of carrying all the weight. They would like to be either rewarded for carrying that weight or they'd like to go somewhere else. And so what they're pushing for is an unequal revenue distribution, which I still don't think will make them happy. I think remember after the Texas OU news broke, there was a meeting of Big 12 ADs and presidents, and they came out and kind of meekly said, well, we could give them more money. And I was like, no, there's no amount of money you could give them that's a better deal than the SEC. And I think that's probably what, if you're Clemson, if you're North Carolina, if you're Florida State, if you're Miami, and you might have other options, you're looking at it going, I don't know, there's the amount of money that these people can give us.
Andy Staples, theathletic.com college football senior writer as well. When we see what's happening, and everyone then wants something today, tomorrow, next week, or whatever, next month, and obviously Notre Dame might be whatever that timeline will be, when do you see the eventual mega conference, so-called national championship, separately from everybody else?
Well, there's no playoff in place for 2026, so something's got to be established. So I'm curious to see what the landscape looks like within the next year, because they're going to start nailing that down in the next year. They're actually going to start talking about it in the next few months. Look, guys, this can go fast. I don't know how. I don't know where those are at, because if I were to say something definitive, I'd be lying. But this really could go fast. We could be talking about months rather than years here.
Where do you see the Big 12 right now when it comes to any kind of strength compared to the top two of SEC and Big 10?
I mean, nowhere.
Yeah.
It's not even close. But
no, not compared to them. Not in that same atmosphere. Not at all. As far as where they are compared to the others besides the Big 10 and SEC.
That that is the operative question. So if they could get, even if they didn't get Oregon and Washington, let's say the Oregon and Washington went to the Big 10, but they got Colorado, Utah, and Arizona schools. I think that's the number 3 conference right there by revenue, and probably by prestige and power. Because if that happens, there's a legit chance that the SEC gets something from the ACC. But even if the SEC doesn't get anything else from the ACC, and if the ACC is stuck in this deal, I think the Big 12 can leapfrog it. Well, I say leapfrog. The Big 12 is already ahead of it. The deal they had currently is ahead of the ACC's deal, and my guess is they'd stay ahead.
Would you put Stanford in with the Big 12, or would they be Big 10 or independent?
I don't know that anybody's going to want them. Now, I'm sure the Big 12 would want them because they're Stanford, and who wouldn't want to have that academic powerhouse in their league? But what fans do they bring? What eyeballs do they bring?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, just saying about the Big 12 and being a third tier, what is the third tier in this case? Is it still on the outside looking in versus the other two, or is it just being the kings of the rest, the best of the rest, so to speak?
See, I think that when this all settles out and we kind of figure out where everybody is, the biggest mistake the Power 2 could make is to kick everybody else out of the playoff or create a postseason that shuts down access to the rest. Let everybody have access. The NCAA tournament, do you think the schools in the Northeast Conference really think they're going to compete for the national title? Of course not. But they start every season with a real chance.
Right.
So make access. And the way they were going to do it with the 6th highest ranked conference champs, there you go. That means 4 conference champs, at least 4 teams that aren't in the SEC or the Big 10 to get in the playoffs in that scenario. And I bet it would be more than that. And I think that keeps everybody happy.
Because that's about the percentage of what they're getting now. Because out of the 4, there's 2 that are SEC, and that right now, I mean, 2 out of 4, and that doesn't include if the Big 10 gets somebody in,
right. And I think in a lot of years it'd be 5 or 6 from outside those 2 leagues if you had a 12-team playoff. So I don't think there's any reason to do anything radically different than what they were planning on doing. I think that would be something that might satisfy somebody. Because here's the thing. If you tell Texas Tech, Baylor, Kansas State, West Virginia, Arizona State, Cal, all those people, you don't matter. You have no shot at the national title. Let's be realistic. They don't have a shot at the national title now.
Sure.
But it feels like they do. So let it continue to feel like that. It doesn't hurt you guys. It doesn't hurt you in the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the SEC at all to do that. And it makes everybody more interested in the sport. And they're going to watch your games casually. Whereas I feel like if you're a K-State fan and the Big 12 just gets totally X'd out of everything, and the Big 10 and the SEC, the only leagues where anybody can really compete for the title, I don't want to watch their games. I'm just mad at them.
Right. Yep.
But if I feel like my team, if it has a great season, has a chance to get in the playoff and go try to slay Goliath, then I'm not as mad. And then I do kind of want to watch Notre Dame, Ohio State, or whatever, USC, Michigan, or whatever it is.
I would think in 2014, TCU and Baylor fans probably, not that they weren't paying attention to everybody else, but probably that year when it was so close for them to get in the playoff, probably paid more attention to everybody else around them than ever before.
Oh, much more of that Ohio State, Wisconsin butt kicking than they ever intended to, because it mattered.
Yeah. Well, I was at Baylor K-State that night, and I know most of the eyes were on their phones or on the screens in the press box going, how many points have they scored? What?
Well, we're done. But yeah, you're right though. And that's the question I've had, Andy, is just, people talk about just, all those teams will just go to the wayside and they'll just be cast away. And it's like, but that's a large chunk of people. And that's a lot of interest. And you're right. Like, I mean, why would I care about the Big Ten title game if I know that it doesn't matter who wins or loses? TCU has no chance whatsoever of getting in. That's you nailed it. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I think that's the biggest mistake they can make. And I don't necessarily think they're going to make that mistake. I think they understand that it being, college football as a national sport is a better sport, and college football with a little bit of Cinderella in it is better for the sport. Like, I don't know how good of a chance, let's say Arizona State suddenly becomes really good, and they're a Big 12 school at that point. I don't know how good of a chance a Big 12 champ Arizona State would have against Big 10 champ Ohio State when the revenue gap is that big and has been that big for 10 years. But I sure still want to see the game.
It's what
I want to see them try.
It makes the men's basketball tournament what it is, and I know that's a different type animal, but that always is what's made it great. It's not who wins it; it's also who also has that first weekend shocker. That first day or two shocker.
And I think of the Big 12 title game last year going in, you're looking at Oklahoma State. If they win, they're probably in the playoff. If things go awry and Baylor wins, well, there's still an outside chance Baylor could get in. But with with that whole, it's just these two and nobody.
The winner definitely got in.
Yeah. Exactly.
Andy, what do you expect to, and thank you for your time today. What do you expect to hear from Brett Yormark next week in Arlington? Anything?
I don't know, because it kind of depends on what everybody else does between now and then. He may be talking about, we're welcoming our new members, Utah and Colorado, or he may be saying, we'll be expanding again, and we bid farewell to Baylor and TCU and Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, and I don't know. I have no idea. Here's what I will say: I find this very interesting, the dynamic, because it has become very much Big 12 and Pac-12 pitted against one another in this fight for survival. And you've got this group of Big 12 ADs and presidents and office staff who've been through every conceivable realignment scenario there is. Nobody in the Pac-12 has been through any of this. They have no idea how any of this works. So if it's street smart and having been through it before and realizing you got to make a big play and a big splash and be very aggressive, well, I'm going to take the Big 12 in that scenario. The only caveat being is if Oregon and Washington say, you know what, we're happy here, we want to be in with these schools that we've been in with for so long, then the power is just gone. There's no power dynamic anymore. They're going to steal some schools from the Big 12 and might be some of the ones right down the road from you.
Andy, thanks for your time. Hope to see you. You'll be in Arlington next week?
I will not, but I will be there in spirit and watching on the computer and tweeting all the way through it.
All right, buddy. Thanks for your time. Andy Staples, theathletic.com with us, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. Max Olson from The Athletic tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and we have Tim Brando right around the corner.
Yeah, and I'm glad that was a lot of good stuff right there with Andy, and I'm glad we could kind of talk through some of the things that have been on my mind, and one in particular was the whole prevailing idea from some corners of college football that there would be basically the AFC NFC idea, right? just be, hey, the Big Ten and the SEC, they'll have their big giant playoff with each other, and then eventually the winners, meet up like it would be the NFL light. Every, comparison that you've heard made here over the last week or even in months, because this has been talked about for quite a while. And that just, I understand TV ratings-wise why that's interesting, but, and I understand that the schools that would be involved would all be the biggest schools for the most part, save maybe in Oregon or a Washington or whatever, but you're still cutting off like half the country from caring at all about college football. Because I'll tell you right now, like we said with Ohio State, Wisconsin in that example, Baylor and TCU are in a dead heat to get into a playoff spot. Baylor wins in dramatic fashion, and they get the tiebreaker, and then there's the whole to-do with Bob Bowlesby not crowning a champion, which I still think in hindsight, I don't care what anybody says, that was a mistake. I still always believe that was a mistake. Now, would it have mattered once Ohio State slaughtered Wisconsin? No. He could have said TCU's our champ or Baylor's our champ, and Ohio State's still getting in through the committee versus those Big 12 schools. I think we all can be realistic enough to know that. But it was just the fact that you had a chance. I tuned into that playoff show after that crazy Saturday, knowing full well that Ohio State's probably getting that number 4 spot. But you know what? Damn it, Baylor and TCU had a chance. And that was all I needed to have me tuning in. If I know going in to the season starting, much less the end, that they have no chance whatsoever, even though we kind of, like he said, everybody sort of knows that. Like, I don't think that K-State fans, as excited as they are about this season, or West Virginia fans, are under any illusion that they're going to be winning the national championship. But they feel like, damn it, if we have a good year with JT Daniels or with Martinez, like maybe this gets us into the playoff and we have a shot. But if you have no hope, then what's the point?
Steve, the Frog fans, to build on Andy's and Craig's thoughts, the big boys will always allow an avenue for the others to get in the playoffs. Hope is an infectious medicine. When we come back, Tim Brando, Fox Sports, next on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat coming off their 4th of July sales event that ended yesterday, and now, of course, some new incentives as well. But the bottom line is sometimes just talk about what they have in some of the awards. The highest ranked brand in initial quality, according to J.D. Power, Dodge. They also have Ram trucks, back-to-back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year. Back-to-back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year. If you want Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, if you want, you can go online at Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep.com, or their location at Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco. Tell the staff I said hi. Ted Teague, the general manager, AJ, who has helped me buy a vehicle there just a couple of years ago. They have SUVs, they have regular sedans, 4-door, 2-door, vans, trucks. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Baylor University is where lights shine bright. So, let there be light. Let there be roommates and teammates, scholarship and championships. Let there be fresh starts and new traditions, fast friendships and lasting impacts. Let there be laughter. Let there be joy. Let there be light. Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, family-owned and operated must-visit pizza place in Waco. Fantastic pizza by the slice or get the whole pie to share. Great happy hour specials every single day, and it's not just pizza. Great wings. You have to try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, pizza pillows, and more. Dine in for a great hangout or carry-out. Order online at shortyspizzashack.com or do yourself a favor and bring your crew to the restaurant at 12th and Bagby. Shorty's Pizza Shack. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543. Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jeweler, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive. It's a staple of the Waco economy. What are some of the things you have coming up?
You know, we kind of call ourselves the wedding ring store. We do all of our own custom work in-house. I've got 2 expert jewelers on staff every day. We can make anything from scratch. We kind of pride ourselves. Probably 9 out of 10, every engagement ring we do is actually made custom to what the customer wants.
People look at that, oh my God, I can't afford it. I can't afford something like that. You've shown me examples that you could fit pretty much any budget.
It doesn't cost any more to custom make something. You still have gold, you still have diamonds, and you still have labor. Best thing about a custom piece is if you have any old jewelry or heirloom jewelry or something passed down from a grandma or somebody, we can take that jewelry and use it towards your wedding ring for the sentimental value, and then you've got the product, and then it's just a little bit of labor and a little bit of design on your part of what you actually want.
You want to know why they're successful? Brad Boozer, the owner of Boozer's Jewelers on the corner of Valley Mills and Lake Air in Waco.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube.
All right, we apologize to Tim Brando as Andy Staples, the athletic, who was great. Hey, Tim, he cut into your time, man.
Well, listen, I like Andy, but it's great to have other guys out there that can suck up the joy of the moment and be more long-winded than me. Okay, so I'll gladly come on after someone just went 5 minutes into my time. I'm happy to be back with you guys. And look, those guys are, they're all over it. As I said, I mentioned I like Andy a lot, and there's so many good ones out there that are nonstop talking with all of the people that I know, and they get the information as best they can. But I think, as you guys know, I talk to the guys that they talk to, but privately. I form the difference in being a reporter versus a commentator is I think, on full display when you talk to me, because I'm not a reporter, but I base my opinions on those that I speak to in a covert manner. And I've been saying for how long that we were getting to this point. None of this is a shock to me. Many others are shocked, and the timing was, I'm not going to lie about that. The timing here was pretty incredible, because it appeared that the announcement of the new Big Ten contract was only weeks, maybe even days away. And obviously that's changed because the makeup of the Big Ten has changed and is continuing to change. It's a fluid situation. So it may be a while until all that's finalized. All we really know is that Fox has the largest of the contracts and is consulting on what's remaining with the contract. So that we might be past Labor Day before we actually know, what the new deal is going to look like, because we don't know what these conferences are going to look like.
Tim, what do you think the end game is for all this?
Well, the end game is to get everything in place so that by the time the new deals are going to be enacted, we can get some form of universal leadership for college football, because they're out of the NCAA. Okay, NCAA is going to be a complete non-factor for college football, period. It should have been a long time ago, as you guys know. I've said that really every time I think I've been on your show. And we're finally going to rid ourselves of the NCAA even dabbling in such matters as infractions and enforcement and the other gobbledygook that they have, rules, the making of rules by virtue of the NCAA when you have soccer coaches on a rules committee. Huh? Really? We've been putting up with that throughout the history of college football. And we're going to get rid of that. Thank God. And the NCAA will be basically in play only because they have a contract that's huge for NCAA men's basketball, which funnels 80% of its revenue, or more than 80%, into the non-revenue producing sports championships. So there is certainly a place for the NCAA to govern all those Olympic sports. The men's basketball tournament is making so much money that it can take care of the women's tournament, as well as so many of those other sports, and NCAA Division II and III football and FCS football. So it's not that the NCAA doesn't provide a worthwhile service for the member institutions, but it just has no business being in Division I college football. It's been outgrown, and the Supreme Court basically told them that in July of last year when they voted 9-0 when the NCAA tried to pull a rabbit out of a hat. So that the end game is getting universal leadership for Division I college football so that football people from schools that are in a position to and want to perform at the highest level are governing themselves. That's the end game. And how those conferences go about doing it, and the makeup of those conferences, and the men that make up the leadership for the conferences, and perhaps, and it's my hope anyway, something close to a rotating czar or czar for Division I college football can be put into play. That's what this sport sorely needs. And we're going to find all of this out in the next 2 calendar years. I think by 24 we'll know. Obviously, the contract for the Big Ten starts a year before the others, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 in 25, and of course the new college football playoff contract will be done in 25 and implemented in 2026. And I think that all of this news is just moving us more towards all of the things that I've been espousing and hoping for over 5 decades. And, there are a lot of fans out there. You've probably seen it on my Twitter line. I've decided today to go ahead and put out another video to react to some of the negativity. People, they see and hear about money, and they think all of a sudden if their team is not in this made up media line called the Big Two, it's being called the Big Two because of revenue, not because anybody outside of the Big Two is not invited. That's garbage, and that's the interpretation. That the world of images and impressions, as my friend Spencer Tillman always says, is all people care about, and they hear that and they get annoyed and pissed off, and they think that that we are looking down our noses at anybody not Big Ten and SEC, and that's not the truth. Okay, it's not. So stop listening to the same talking heads who say the same things, who aren't necessarily looking out for the good of all of Division I college football. We just have a lot of confusion out there. Okay, and I'm still having to remind people that the NCAA hasn't had a thing to do. I mean, a thing to do with the monetary aspects of college football since the Supreme Court ruling of the Universities of Georgia and Oklahoma Supreme Court case of 1984. We wouldn't be here without that. And yet there are people, even in media, that don't know what the hell I'm talking about when I say it.
Tim, just on the surface from a football and I guess just overall standpoint, what are your thoughts on those two LA schools now being Big Ten members?
Well, I think it's a seismic shift, yes. An incredibly sound business decision on their part, no doubt about it. And by the way, I'd say this if I didn't work at Fox, okay? Let me clear that up. No one at any network or any company that I've ever worked for told me what I needed to say. If I wouldn't have lasted 5 years if that were the case. Okay. I think it's great for those schools. I think USC probably figured, you know what, we've been holding the water for this conference for how long, and what are we getting? And now we've got an opportunity to get over $100 million annually versus what? Look, that's a sound business decision. And UCLA going with them, from a football standpoint, people might say, and I've even heard this, well, gee, they're just tagging along. What does UCLA bring? What does UCLA bring? Have you buried your head in the sand for how many years? Do you know anything about college basketball? Yeah, I think they bring a lot to the Big Ten. Okay, no doubt about it. And it started the ball rolling. Yes, no question. And I don't think that the ball's going to stop rolling, as I said, until possibly the end of the summer, going into the Labor Day weekend. We'll maybe figure all this out. But I think it's a tremendous move for those two schools. I think it clearly sends the message that it's football here that's driving the bus. I think we all knew that. If you didn't know it before, you certainly know it now. I've seen all the reporting about, well, what about the Olympic sports? Well, you find a way to take care of the Olympic sports. Okay, we'll get to that matter in just a moment. Right now, the priority is getting the revenue from Division I college football, because never before have these schools needed the revenue to the extent that they need it now. They understand, those being the leaders of the institutions and the conferences, they now know that stabilizing the long-term financial futures of their schools is forever hitched to the wagon of college football. And you've got to do whatever you can to make sure that the viability of your school financially is in a great place, because with all this money out there, the over $75 million or so reported to be going to SEC schools, and the over $100 million annually reportedly anyway, to the Big Ten schools, you can bet that the players are going to be in a position to get revenue share within the new structuring of the NIL, which I believe will happen hopefully before the end of the year. Hopefully, when we get some stability in our college football Division I leadership, we'll be able to see some help after the November midterms, particularly if one party controls both the House and the Senate, so that these states that have such a competitive advantage over other states, that disparity is shoved aside. We need to do something about that. We can't get the genie back in the bottle, but we can certainly regulate name, image, and likeness far better than we currently are.
Tim, you mentioned the Olympic sports, and what do you do about the Olympic sports? Well, if I'm USC and UCLA and I've been operating with a $37 million budget and I all of a sudden have $100 million to do it, they've been taken care of before. Now you have more money to do that. So
yeah, you do. And perhaps the travel can be handled in a similar way, only a larger version of what they've already been doing in the Pac-12. People forget this, but in the Pac-12, part of the reasons why it's hard to win on the road in that league consistently has been that the road trips are really long road trips, okay? It is far from Tucson, Arizona to Pullman, Washington, and Eugene, Oregon. Those are long trips. So when you go on the road in the Pac-12, whether it's football or basketball, you basically, especially basketball, you go off to the state of Washington and you play in Pullman and you play in Seattle. You go to Arizona and you play Arizona, on a Wednesday, Saturday. You make sure you play teams in that same area. Well, I think on a larger scale, obviously, if you're in the Big Ten, you make sure that and you're out west, you make sure you fly to Chicago, and then you hit every school that's within driving distance in a bus from Chicago to name that school, okay? Indiana, Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois. You hit them, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. There are ways to get this done. The people that are bringing this stuff up are the ones that just want to say something bad about intercollegiate athletics and are just lathered up every time that they can poke holes at it. And you know who those people are. They never like anything relative to college athletics. They're pro sports people in pro sports towns that can't wait to use college athletics as its whipping boy on a daily basis.
Tim, when you look at the current state of what else is out there, I mean, I think it's pretty much everybody's in agreement that Notre Dame kind of just holds the future sort of in their hands for probably however long they want. Like, they're never going to not be a very wanted commodity. But in terms of, what you see out there with the Pac-12 now needing to respond and talking with the ACC and whatever that could turn out to be. And then there's the Big 12 right there in the middle, and a feeling amongst those, in power that they probably need to be on the aggressive a little bit. Just how do you sort of see that landscape of the non-Big Ten SEC aspects of this, the alliance talk and those sorts of things?
Well, Mr. Yormark certainly hit the ground running, didn't he?
Oh, man.
Yeah. Welcome to collegiate athletics.
Media days next week.
I'm sure Bob Bowlesby said as he was welcoming him into the office, well,
good luck.
You ready for a field trip? Let's go. But I do think, and I said this earlier, everyone was claiming that was an outside-the-box hire. Well, in my mind, outside the box is exactly what intercollegiate athletics has needed for quite some time. His background in marketing, both from the NBA standpoint with the Nets, as well as with NASCAR, and even from an entertainment point of view with Jay-Z and Rock Nation, this is all going to serve him well. And I think we'll bring a breath of fresh air to have a guy like him in the business. And certainly his resume is a stark contrast to that of his predecessor. But Bob Bowlesby is to be congratulated for doing what he did. They're ahead of the game, the Big 12, because of what Bob Bowlesby did, reacting to Oklahoma and Texas exiting a year ago, to be proactive, to get BYU, to get the three top schools out of the American Conference and have some momentum at a time when their contract negotiations were about to come up. And, as I said before, I think that they're in position already to be ahead of the curve, particularly when compared to the Pac-12. The Pac-12's got problems, and at the very top of the list of problems is the fact that George Kliavkov, along with Jim Phillips, it's not surprising that the two leagues that are most vulnerable are being run by the two commissioners that voted against the 12-team playoff at their meetings that took place around the time of the Final Four. That's a problem. Those presidents can't be particularly happy about the situation that their schools find themselves in those collective leagues. Well, tell me two leagues that needed to have a 12-team playoff any more than the Pac-12 and the ACC. So you reap what you sow, and that's the situation that I think has propelled the Big 12 into a very positive situation when compared to the other two conferences. And I got a couple of thoughts that I'll pass along. One, I don't think you're going to see a merger of any kind between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, because the Pac-12, just its mission statement is so different from that of the Big 12. Issues, I think, with faith-based universities, certainly that figured into the equation for BYU when Utah went and they didn't. It was not a problem, as you could see, with the Big 12, geographically set in the Bible Belt of the country. So if anything's going to be done between the Pac-12 and anyone, it's more likely to be the ACC than the Big 12. But again, I think the defense mechanism for both makes the Big 12 to be in an advantageous position at this stage. I said this shortly after in fact, it was the day of the USC UCLA announcement. The Big 12 was on the horn right away with Utah, with Colorado, with the two Arizona schools. And I thought it was pretty remarkable yesterday to see tweets coming out from, the Andy Staples and the Nicole Arbachs of the world saying the Pac-12 has now announced that it is beginning negotiations for its new television contract. At the very same time that was being reported by them, another report was out simultaneously by another reporter. 6 of those schools out of the Pac-12 are in serious conversations with the Big 12.
Yeah.
So they're clearly already behind. I mean, it's obvious the Pac-12 is already behind. So I think the Big 12 here, despite what Paul Feinbaum might say, is not dead yet and is going to be in a position of power when compared to what's left of the so-called autonomous 5 as we knew it in coming days and weeks.
Tim, can you ever see at one point in the Big 12, Texas got more of a piece of a pie than others in the conference when it came to TV revenue? Then there's the Longhorn Network, which was kind of you could have that, but we all want to be equal. The SEC has always been, we're as strong as our weakest link. It's great. That's why no matter if some teams hate each other, they're all in it as one. Can you ever see again down the road with all this expansion and whatever that they go back to where some schools get more than others, or would that create a problem?
I think it would be very wise to follow really the blueprint that Roy Kramer said with the SEC. He gets overlooked a lot, Smokey. He does. He gets overlooked a lot for setting up the SEC for its incredible success, starting with the first ever SEC playoff game. Even though the conference divisions are being wiped away pretty much across the board, it was that pickup of both A&M at the time, South Carolina and Arkansas at the time in 1992 that enabled the SEC championship and a playoff game to determine who would win a conference title. Basically, what it created was another revenue stream so that, at the time, people forget this, but ABC did the first couple of SEC title games, even though CBS had the contract for regular season college football. So they had to absorb that in the next negotiations. It was a moneymaker for them to do what they did. But what Kramer said from the jump and what Slive followed through on as the SEC grew, and particularly with its SEC on CBS moniker, even though the deal was one of the great deals ever for a television entity, and it's still intact for another 2 years, a $55 million TV deal. They got on a Tiffany network. They were on CBS at that wonderful time of 3:30 Eastern and 2:30 Central, and their championship game was so big that other conferences wouldn't schedule a game up against them. They didn't want to lose their audience. So, I think that having the money divided equally is absolutely the way to go if you can do it. Now, there are specific circumstances where maybe you have to alter that theme to some extent. I'll give you an example. Let's say Notre Dame, who can do pretty much whatever they want to do, right, and still be in great shape. If they wanted to save the ACC, they could. They could say, you know what, we decided we'll go ahead and join, but we want a bigger piece of the financial pie, and we want to hold on to our NBC contract for our home games. Now, do you think Jim Phillips would give them that? I do. Whatever you want, okay, that's what he'd say. I think there are special exceptions that you make in order to consummate a deal that can save your conference because, look, if Clemson leaves and Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, if they're gone, you're done, okay? And the ACC is this is how bad their TV deal is. They barely make annually a little over 12 to 13 million per school in a contract that lasts until 2036. Now, there's a big grant of rights that you have to pay to get out because you have to pay it over that period of time through 2036. But in 1 year of being in the Big Ten, Notre Dame can handle whatever that grant of rights issue is because they're going to make $100 million in a single season if they go to the Big Ten. They don't have to have it. They get greater endowments and make more money than just about anybody in this conversation of college football. But I think that if you're the commissioner of a league, you've got to take a look at that. From a Big 12 standpoint, specifically to your region of the country, I think the first and foremost thing you do without the two big kahunas in there is you make absolutely certain that the money is divided equally. And you should, because, look, the top tier of the new Big 12 is going to include Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU. Who am I leaving out? I think the addition certainly of BYU puts them in that area. They've got an international following.
Oklahoma State.
Because of Cincinnati and Houston. Houston's a financially solvent location. I mean, you've got a whole new echelon or tiers, if you will, of power within the Big 12, but not so much that you would necessarily change the payout. I think it would be very smart to get rid of that now that Oklahoma and Texas have exited stage right.
Tim, this is more of a kind of the fantasy social media question here. You know, there's obviously been a lot of talk about everything having to do with expansion, but a lot of talk about, you know, who could the Big Ten potentially grab? Who could the SEC grab if the ACC grant of rights were to, you know, just disintegrate or something like that? Mm-hmm. Now, see, a lot of people rumored who do you think would be, if the SEC could have their pick, who would be the best fits, would be the most logical fits, like a Clemson, et cetera, if the ACC were to just fantasy-wise, like I said, fall apart?
Yeah. Well, I think there's still some surprises from the Big Ten. Okay. It all depends on what Notre Dame does and what the next move by the Big Ten might be. Okay. There is absolutely no denying in terms of product on the field and you can make a case that if in college basketball, Villanova created a blue blood, and they did, certainly in college football, there's been a blue blood created at Clemson.
Right.
That we wouldn't be talking about if Dabo Swinney hadn't done in the last half dozen years what he's done. Listen, this talk about, you know, having AAU universities within your league, I think that some of that conversation now has been somewhat swept under the rug, and particularly when you've got an institution like Notre Dame and this is all based on Notre Dame going in, okay? My hypothetical is based on Notre Dame saying, you know what, we're coming. Well, I wouldn't rule out Clemson from the Big Ten either. I think the potential is there because you've already crossed the entire country. You know, you got a team in Piscataway, New Jersey, and two teams in LA. If you put a team in the Southeast, I mean, now you got a national, you know, truly national conference, a league that is truly national in every sense. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying everything's on the table. That's what I'm telling you. Most people would say under no circumstances would Clemson want to be anywhere other than the SEC. Okay, I'm going to pause on that one. I'm going to tell you there may be more to that than you think. Let's not forget about the political issues between South Carolina and Clemson, too, which can sometimes be rough. We've seen that in the past when we were talking about potential expansion. Florida State and Clemson were at the top of the list when they wound up getting Arkansas and South Carolina. Okay, they were at the top of the list, and that was a long time ago. And, you know, I think that, you know, they were talking Nebraska before they wound up with Missouri the last time around. Okay, so anything could possibly happen here. But if Notre Dame is off the table, then the next big get for me is Clemson, solely because of what they've done, how the program has projected itself, and both on the field and off, they've grown their national brand. But North Carolina, right after that, is of greater value than any other school in the ACC. Any other school in the ACC. Carolina's got incredible endowments. It's an outstanding university with an alumni base scattered all through America. When they play basketball, there's no higher rating for any team. They even outrate Kentucky in the NCAA tournament. Carolina drives it. Miami would be the other one because everyone would love to see, you know, a team from South Florida. And then Florida State has lost some of its luster, but if Miami's in, Florida State's got to be considered given their history and tradition. but they're not of the same value that they were, say, when Jimbo took over for Bobby Bowden. Those are the big gets. In the Pac-12, I've been hearing all about the Bay Area because of market size in San Francisco. But if you visit Cal or Stanford, and I love both institutions, I've been to them several times in recent years. College football is just not as big a deal in Berkeley, California, nor is it in Palo Alto. I did a Notre Dame Stanford game there 2 years ago at the close of the season, and there were more Irish fans there than they were Cardinal fans. And as good as they were under David Shaw for such a long period of time, and they carried the banner for the Pac-12 North for, about a decade, but they have struggled of late. Washington and Oregon, well, actually in order, Oregon and Washington are the next two you want to get. Those are the two that bring the biggest ratings that are remaining from the Pac-12 that you could foresee going into the Big Ten. They're the next calls, in my opinion, you make. If you get Notre Dame and you're trying to fill out the next three, if you're going to use two of those three in the Pac-12, first you go to Eugene, then you go to Seattle to get those two programs. And when you're at those two programs, whether it's at Alson or you're at the stadium on the lake, I mean, it is just gorgeous.
Yeah, it looks it
in Seattle at Husky Stadium. If you've ever been to those two stadiums, you know what I'm talking about. They are, without a doubt, in my opinion, perceived as a bigger get than either Stanford or Cal.
Tim, I know you got to go. We always appreciate it, and you jumped on the day when we discussed the next time we could get you. We appreciate your time and your knowledge. Well, thanks for allowing me. I know you don't love to have me back as often, perhaps, as you have recently, but I was looking at my schedule, and I said, how about today? And it worked out. I'm always here for you. You know that. Give my best to all the Bears out there. I'm looking forward to getting in there for some games this season. I hope you are. And when you are, we'll make sure we see you. Thank you so much, Tim Brando, who has almost become as steady a segment with us as the Phil Bennett times, as far as what he brings to the table. Thanks to Tim Brando for his time, Fox Sports.
Paul had the half smile, half frown when Florida State was mentioned.
And look,
hey, they're in. Oh, their value has dropped.
Yeah. No, it's true. And my top five is about the ACC teams of value. I value them a little bit higher because their TV ratings are still really good. In fact, I think they're the highest rated team in the ACC, and that includes Clemson because people my age grew up with that brand and they didn't grow up with Clemson. So you grew up with, I'll watch Florida State, and maybe I forgot that they suck now.
Yeah. I definitely think that Mike Norvell's got to get a little kick in the pants going there, man.
Hey,
I mean, it's starting to feel like, and just from the outside looking in, I know what Florida State meant when I was growing up and what they've meant for a long time. I mean, shoot, they involved right there at the very beginning of the playoff just a few years ago. But since then, it has not been great or a lot to write home about, and they need to fix that.
I can tell you how the perception has changed. Twitter yesterday was a buzz that they got a 4-star defensive end, and not that that's not a big thing. Everybody wants to, but when I was in school, they've been like, yeah, okay. Where's his 10 friends?
Where are the other ones?
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, he covers UCLA, Ben Bolch, the LA Times, and really what has been the reaction from that area. Yeah, USC gets a lot of the glamour, and that's part of their tradition and who they are. But what about the UCLA perspective? Ben Bolch, LA Times, next, Sikkim, 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Dr. Kent Petty, a guy that can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and as you get older, maybe used to be. 1 out of every 3 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Could be your sex drive, could be your energy, could be sleep habits, and it also could be just putting on a little weight. And so, Dr. Kent Petty, contact them, pettycliniclowt.com, and tell them I sent you. In the left corner, there's a phone number and email. And tell him what you are looking for. He will then get you an appointment so you can have your blood drawn. He will get the results and then get with you. And then if the testosterone levels in your body are too low, he can put you in a program to help you increase that so you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be. pettycliniclowt.com.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
It's summertime. There's picnics, reunions, cookouts, and so much to do. And Waco Custom Marketplace on Lake Air Drive in Waco is your home for the butcher shop that can help you with beef, pork, poultry, and seafood. They are spectacular at being able to deliver you whatever cut of steak you want. Bone-in ribeye, however thick you want it, that's great. They'll do it. Sirloin, T-bone, porterhouse, bacon-wrapped filet. And, of course, as I mentioned, they have pork, poultry, and seafood. Their Norwegian salmon is spectacular. Also, all of the sauces and seasonings you'll ever need, all the ingredients you'll ever need to make sure you have that perfect, flawless taste. So it's delicious whenever you take something off the grill. And a full-fledged bakery as well, with fresh baked bread and kolaches every single day. Up and down the aisle of Waco Custom Marketplace, you also have what you need, from knickknacks to snacks to more, at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, Waco Custom Marketplace.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, behind the bank.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
It is 5:07. 365 Sports, YouTube, Sikkim 365 Radio. Ben Bolch, who covers UCLA. We've had him on before, back when they were making their run, of course, with basketball, like they do quite a bit. Ben joins us on 365 Sports. Ben, thanks for your time. What was your reaction when you heard that UCLA and USC were headed to the Big Ten, and what's been the fan base's reaction?
Well, I was pretty much completely shocked. I didn't have any inkling that this was coming. Maybe I should have, but yeah, I think my reaction was similar to a lot of the fan base. Didn't really see it coming, but from both UCLA and USC perspectives, I think it makes a lot of sense. Both obviously have a lot of similarities, a lot of differences. From UCLA perspective, their athletic department is in more than $100 million in debt, and this solves that almost immediately with the payouts they're going to get from the Big Ten. So that was a big deal. And then obviously you've got the prestige in both football and men's basketball. In football being able to challenge the SEC for supremacy, and then in men's basketball having a deeper, more balanced conference. So made a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, and I think UCLA is very happy to be where it is right now.
It just in a recruiting sense for UCLA and USC, now they pretty much can own LA and say, if you want to play your college football in the city of Los Angeles, the only way that you can guarantee that is to play here, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen them lose a lot of top players to the SEC and the ACC in recent years because, let's face it, the Pac-12 is not putting teams in the college football playoffs. So I think that now that you're going to be more in position to do that with success, then that's going to be a big factor for athletes who want to be on the national stage and really showcase themselves before the NFL. So, yeah, I think it's a game changer. Now, the caveat there, especially from the UCLA perspective, is they need to play a lot better, and they've only had one winning season since 2015. So they've got some ground to make up, but certainly the stage is set for a sea change in football.
How dire do you think, I mean, you mentioned the money part of this, but how dire was it really when it came to Olympic sports and UCLA potentially?
Oh, it was dire. I think you set me up there nicely based on what you did yesterday. That, you know, if this trajectory continued, UCLA was going to have to take a hard look at cutting some of its Olympic sports. I mean, they have 25 sports. They could have been in a situation like Stanford a couple of years ago where Stanford was set to announce, or they did announce that they were going to cut 11 sports. Now, I'm not sure UCLA would have cut that many, and Stanford ended up reversing course, but certainly, they were going to have to take a long, hard look at making some fundamental changes to the way they operated, and some of their lesser sports were going to be potentially on the chopping block. So this is a big deal. It secures the future for all those teams and the entire athletic experience. So, a lot for UCLA to kind of celebrate here that they've secured their future.
Ben, I don't know this. I did glance at USC's roster yesterday, but I have not with UCLA. But it made me think, with those two ending up now in the Big Ten at some point, does that then, as Craig mentioned, the recruiting part of L.A., does that block out most everybody else, even as fertile as that area is? And how much does UCLA actually get compared to USC from that city?
I think traditionally USC, the city has leaned for USC for, you know, most of the five-star talent, particularly skill positions, but it'll be interesting because UCLA's kind of taken a different approach in recruiting the last couple of years under Chip Kelly. They've really gone heavy into the transfer portal. So this could be a new way for them to kind of go back in and say, hey, we're going to start reprioritizing the high school kids we couldn't get before now, because now we're more attractive to them, and they want to come here from the jump as opposed to having to transfer in. So I'll be watching this very closely. UCLA's hit the transfer portal as hard as anybody in the country. So it remains to be seen whether that philosophy is going to change as a result of this move.
Do you see? Does this help Chip Kelly in the long term? I mean, I know they were better, last year. Does it maybe buoy him a little bit longer because you don't want to change going into a new conference if they say they struggle a little bit this year?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think to the contrary. I think that you want to be positioned to put your best foot forward going into the Big Ten. So I think that these next 2 years are critical for Chip Kelly. I don't think that there's any guarantee that he's the UCLA's coach when they set foot onto their Big Ten opener. Looking at their schedule this year, they've got one of the easiest schedules in school history. They've got no Power 5 non-conference games. In fact, they've got a FCS school for the first time in school history. So they're set up for success this year. My big thing is 2023, and schedule gets a little bit harder. They're going to be breaking a new quarterback. But I think there is kind of a mandate that Chip Kelly needs to show that he can put them at contention level within the conference to be that coach in the Big Ten.
What is the expectation for UCLA in football? What has to, the common, this is what we need to be every year, or then the heat rises?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, particularly when you look at the downfall of UCLA football, and they haven't been to the Rose Bowl games since 1999, January 1st, 1999. So I think realistically, compete for the division title pretty much every year, and then maybe every 3 to 4 years, get to the title game and with a chance to win it and go to a major bowl game. I think that having a really successful year that puts them on the national stage every 3 to 4 years is kind of the benchmark for UCLA where they want to be. And I don't think that's shouldn't be too high of a bar for them to hit. They certainly have not hit it in recent years, but I think that would keep the fan base happy.
Ben, I know that LA is a pro sports town, but has this USC, UCLA story been able to crack through some of the headlines maybe locally and surpass some of those pro sports, or is this still kind of under the radar in comparison to what it would be like maybe in some other places?
Oh no, now we're all about the metrics. So we know how many people read every story and how many subscriptions they sell. And I'll tell you, we've been heating up the charts with these stories. There's a ton of interest. It's been the story of the week for sure, probably the month. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in this. And the great thing is there's so many stories to be told between now and 2024 when that first game's played, and then the first year or two there's going to be tremendous interest as well. So I think this is a huge boost for interest for the both schools, and certainly going to sell us a lot of subscriptions. So we're very happy about it as well.
When is Pac-12 Media Days?
It is July 29th, and interestingly enough, I had to look up when Big Ten Media Days is because I'm going to head there as well. I'm going to be going to Indianapolis July 26th and 27th. So that's going to be a busy week.
It's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting. I'll be reading your covers, that's for sure, Ben.
Well,
yeah.
For those who are left of the Pac-12, and I know that there's still a couple of more years for USC and UCLA, Big 12 Media Days is next Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
Brand new commissioner will be there bright and early, and it'll be interesting to see if anything happens between now and then as well. Have you really reached out to many others who cover the rest of the Pac-12 about anything that they feel might happen with them?
No, I mean, to be honest, I've been on vacation this whole time. I've been working pretty much every day, but I haven't been, making the usual bonus coverage calls that I normally make. But yeah, you just from kind of, being on Twitter and seeing what's out there, it's, I think there's a lot of panic and a lot of worry that, these schools are going to be left behind if they don't look to join a Big 12 or make some kind of bold move to solidify the Pac-12. So there's a lot of anxiety out there, and I think a lot of people want to see how this is going to unfold so that they know that their futures are going to be secured.
Ben, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And a lot of people's vacation in some ways were interrupted, as we heard from Ross Dellenger as well. By the way, there's a chat. Seek to destroy 562, the picture of the Song Girls, finest cheerleaders in the country. So, Garrett, they appreciate that picture.
They're headed to the Big Ten as well. the whole package of Trojans athletics is headed. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating to see. I asked Ben that Media Days question because I couldn't find it on a little quick search. And I know he'd probably know off the top of his head, but also because it's just dawned on me, I guess it was yesterday or the day before, of, yeah, we got Big 12 Media Days next week, so that will be interesting, midweek next week. But when they found out about Oklahoma and Texas, that was after we had wrapped Media Days. We were at Media Days last year. Yep. Everything was fine in Arlington. We're at Cowboys Stadium, AT&T Stadium. Everything's fine. Everything's normal. Everybody's on the same page. And then, 2 days later, when that news came out from Brett Zorneman, who broke it open, and just all hell broke loose after that. So now the Big 12 goes in knowing a little bit more about what's what. Much different scenario from last year. But what's really interesting is they had those media days. None of that was talked about because we didn't know yet. But with these upcoming, it's all out there already. So it's going to be really interesting to see, George Kliavkoff at the podium while USC's still there and UCLA's still there, and whatever Oregon and Washington plan on doing.
Because that's almost a month from now. It's 3 weeks from now. So you get 3 weeks, and again, it could be slow, it could be fast. In 3 weeks, that could be the second to last Pac-12 Media Days.
Yeah.
And they know it going in because the other schools have decided after this negotiation, it's not worth it. Let's just, go where we're going to go. And then you're sitting around walking around at the funeral. So,
Big 12 Media Days last week, it was July 15th, 14th, and 15th. Brent Zerman, his story, I believe, came out on the 21st.
Wow, so it was a week after. It seemed like it was right after that for some reason.
Everything was hunky-damn-dory.
Oh, yeah, it was. And you know what? In hindsight, it's one of those, hindsight's 20/20, but it really does, when you look back on it, I don't know, just something. It was too good. It was like it was too calm almost, and then sure enough, a week later, boom, it wasn't that calm.
And it was different than when A&M was bolting. When they had that that felt fake.
Well, and look, that 1 year, everybody knew that they wanted
2011 or 12.
Yeah, they knew it. By the way, we are at 19,919 subscribers right now. There are currently 1,495 of you watching. If you are not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe right now. When we get to 20,000, if we can get to it by 20,000, by the end of the show, we're going to give away a hat. That's a directive from on high.
Well, and I know that sometimes you subscribe and then it's like, I don't want to see every single, you can mute, but you just, subscribing, we're not going to do every podcast. Like, hit like and subscribe like everybody does out there. We never really ask for it, but this time seems as good as any. And if you want to support, that's the way to support, is just hit a button and then mute us if you want to. But, just hit that button, please.
We yesterday gave away 2 caps, and both of them were mailed today. I went to the post office and got them out, and I had Gene, I think it's Gene Keene, who asked if I could send one of these Sikkim 365. Do you have a larger? Doesn't matter. One of these smaller little stickers that I have on the laptop. I'm going to send him one of those. Somebody just asked, and I say somebody, I hate to say it that way, when they say, "What about? Are you selling them the hats, or is that just a promo?" No. We are eventually, and we hope very soon, being able to put all these hats, and there's others that we have, in our merchandise store, bearskins.com with a Z, and let you have an opportunity to buy the hat or hats that you want. 254-339-1122 text line. Chat room continues to blow up. We appreciate you, and you also helping build our audience, as Paul mentioned through Cole Barber, telling him that just a moment ago. Back in a moment, John Machota on the Cowboys. Paul's Top 5 coming up in a moment. Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports.
Allen Samuels is having the July 4th sales event on the award-winning new 2022 Ram 1500 Quad Cab Lone Star with no payments for 90 days. The special value is up to $7,000 or get $4,000 bonus cash and 2.9% for 72 months. Ram trucks are designed to be durable, functional, and stylish. This legendary truck gives you that first-class feel. Allen Samuels in Waco, the place to shop Ram trucks. First responders get $500 extra cash.
Come by. Let's be friends.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, cause weight gain, and wreak havoc on your sexual desire and performance. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results, so if you're tired of being tired, I challenge you to man up and Google search Low T Waco or go online pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $150 a month, includes lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, follow-up visits compared to $395 a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T as board-certified physician consultations will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone available. Contact Petty Clinic Low T today, just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway. Petty Clinic Low T, helping men become the high-performance men they deserve to be. PettyClinicLowT.com or Google search Low T Waco.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for our weekly segment with John Machota of The Athletic, brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
John Machota with us, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports, as we get into some NFL football news in the Cowboys.
Yeah. Also, please keep in that subscribe button. We're at 1977, so 23 more to go, and 19977. I'm sorry, John. The hot story around like the Cowboys Twitter and the internet is the Cowboys could be interested in Julio Jones. Is this something that you can throw cold water on based on kind of everything they've done, or does it have legs based on the fact that wide receiver is still very much up in the air for them early in the season?
Yeah, I wouldn't completely dismiss that. I mean, I've seen, when you're on Twitter and that, you see a bunch of different scenarios and things like that. Like, I see that as a much more likely option than the stuff where people will say, well, why don't they try and get DK Metcalf? Like, Julio Jones will come at a cheap price, and obviously he's had plenty of time playing for Dan Quinn in Atlanta, so there's some familiarity there. So I wouldn't completely rule that one out because I don't think it would cost very much. And they do still need help at wide receiver. I'm not completely sold that they're going to be ready to roll the first couple of weeks if they're not going to have Michael Gallup. So if they were to do something like that right before training camp, that would make some sense to me just because it wouldn't be a major investment. And if it doesn't work out, then you move on and you go with the guys that you have. But yeah, I'm surprised that they haven't added another veteran receiver after we didn't get to see anything out of James Washington in OTAs and minicamp. Jalen Tolbert's obviously a 3rd-round pick, a rookie. I think he's going to be a good player, but I mean, they need some help immediately right away, week 1, week 2, when they're probably not going to have Michael Gallup. So to me, Julio Jones, I know he's obviously not the same Julio Jones he was, but I'm open to kicking the tires on that.
John, I saw your list, and this is definitely list season, but the 10 or the worst moves by the Dallas Cowboys over the past 10 years. What was it like putting together this list? Were there a lot of leftovers that you feel like you could have put in, or was it hard to get to 10? Can you kind of take us through this process and, just trying to be interesting during the offseason, which you've done a good job of?
Yeah, it was kind of difficult because my big thing is, and I probably care too much about this, is that I was worried that I put this out there and I was going to not include a major one, and I'm just like, oh my God, how did you forget that? That obviously needs to be on here. So getting the first 5 was pretty easy. I would say the toughest one for me personally to slot on there was the not moving on sooner from Jason Garrett. And the reason I say that is because, yeah, he goes 8-8 those first 3 seasons, and then they go 12-4. And then after that, there were just ups and downs to where you can kind of make an argument if you're Jerry Jones of why you would keep him one more year. Why you would continue to keep him one more year. But just out of the grand scheme of everything, you take it all into account. 9 seasons, you don't get to an NFC Championship game. That's a long time to go with a head coach of the Dallas Cowboys and not have that postseason success. So it had to be on there somewhere. I think I had it at 5, but I don't know exactly. I know some people argue, it should have been number 1. They should move down with them after 3 years or whatever. But I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think that 9 years is probably a little too long. But that was probably the toughest one for me to actually like slot in there. And then I've seen some people argue that the Taco Charlton pick should be over Greg Hardy. I can see it both ways. I just think Taco Charlton, I understood what they were doing. It made sense for their system. I thought TJ Watt was a better player, but I can at least understand it. I never could understand the signing of Greg Hardy.
John, I'll back you up on that. If you walk to the locker room pre-Greg Hardy, during Greg Hardy, and post-Greg Hardy, there was a definite vibe that was completely different with him not being in there. None of the team really wanted that. Nobody liked that guy. Nobody wanted him around. And this is the Cowboys, who have had some pretty hard dudes in there, and none of them wanted Greg Hardy there.
Well, and then the other thing about it is, too, is like you have a young rookie Randy Gregory on that roster, too. Is this the guy you want in that position room, being the mentor to your young Randy Gregory that you're trying to bring along? And obviously DeMarcus Lawrence too. I believe that was he was in his second season. So like, there's just a lot of things there where I don't necessarily believe that Jason Garrett was I know Jason Garrett wasn't a huge fan of it, but like, it's one of those things where it's such a Cowboys type move that they always take these chances. And to a certain extent, I get where they come off of taking some of these chances, but that one was just, it made little sense at the time, just because he had just been released, obviously, from the Panthers for off-the-field reasons with the situation with his girlfriend. And then they sign him, and then it just, like, every week it seemed to be something else with him. And and then they weren't playing well. You're kind of like, why aren't they just parting ways with him? And then the other part of it is that, like, nobody wanted to even give him a chance after that. That was his last season in the NFL, never played again. And so, that whole thing will always be number one for me. But if someone wants to argue that they should have taken Watt over Taco, I mean, hey, that's fine. I can understand that too. I had it at number 2.
But looking at your list, 7 of those things, Greg Hardy's not, Gavin Escobar's not, and you could probably say that now Nolan Carroll is not, but the 7 other things are all still affecting them right now, aren't they? So the 7 things in the last 10 years are still weighing them down.
Well, yeah, that, and then also the fact that they continue to do a lot of those same things. They continue to take chances in the second round. They took a chance. They're taking a chance with Sam Williams. They took a chance last year with Kelvin Joseph. I mentioned in my 10th one, the one about Nolan Carroll, that if things don't turn around with Kelvin Joseph, drafting Kelvin Joseph in the second round is going to be something that has to be on that list in the future. If you get nothing out, I mean, my thing is with the Cowboys, and it goes to your point, is that they don't invest heavily in outside free agents. And so if you're not going to invest that way, you have to hit in the draft. And everyone knows it is just a crapshoot in those back rounds and even after probably the third round. So when these second round picks, I just don't think you can take the chances on some of these guys that they have. Get the solid player that you're going to have for at least 4+ years and keep building that way, as opposed to, hoping that you can turn this Randy Gregory into a Pro Bowl player, hoping that Jalen Smith stays healthy and everything works out there. Like, there's a lot of risk involved there for a team that if those risks don't pan out, it's not like they make up for it by signing big name players from other teams in free agency. They're just stuck with it.
John, Cowboys head of the SEC or Big Ten in this new crazy realignment?
There's no question they would be in the SEC.
Oh, yeah, but, for sure. For sure.
And I mean, that makes sense too, logistically. That's the thing, with me being a Florida State fan, I just feel like we're headed to basically a 2-conference type college football, like major college football. And it's going to be, a North Division and a South Division, Big Ten and SEC. And it's like, everyone has to get in. I feel like if you're a big time program, musical chair style, and it's like, man, I would hate for Florida State to go to the Big Ten if they're left there, like standing like, well, we got to join one of these conferences. The idea of having to go from the South to have to play all those games up north. And I think that we're going to see with USC now in the Big Ten, it's going to be interesting to see them have to play like, hey man, USC is going to have players and they're going to, and I think Lincoln Riley's going to do well, but it's going to be fun to have to see USC play conference games like in Happy Valley in like late October, November. The last Florida State game I went to was up at Notre Dame, and it was a November game, and it was like 30 degrees, night game, windy, rain, blowing. That's just not what you're used to in the South, and so it's like, stay away from joining that Big Ten if you're a team in the South. Stay in the South. That is going to be fun seeing Lincoln Riley in blizzard conditions and wait till he goes Minnesota. To Camp Randall. There were games in Ames and Manhattan where it got a little bit cold, but it's just a little bit different for the LA crowd. It's going to be fun to see that. John, on your list as well, I noticed that 4 of those decisions were
of people, players, or coaches who were already with the organization. For example, the extension of Jalen Smith, the extension of Ezekiel Elliott, I think also the one with Jason Garrett, and I forgot the others as well. So it's not like they just make bad decisions on what they do as compiling talent. It's also when they have it, they seem like they sometimes mismanage it.
Yeah, I mean, the Jalen Smith one obviously hurts you there, and that's going to set you back. I mean, you make him one of the highest paid linebackers, and after that contract, you get nothing close to what you got the year before that when he was playing at his best. And the same thing with Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott, I think when he's healthy, if he can stay healthy, I still think he's one of the top 10 backs in the league, but you're paying him to be the best back in the league. You're paying him to. That's why, like I pointed out in the article, the thing is with Zeke is like, Zeke is a great team guy. Like, he's going to play through injury. He's going to be there for you. He's not going to skip practices. Like, he's a hard-nosed dude, okay? And that's clearly, like, that's something that Jason Garrett certainly wanted when they drafted him, like, to be that bell cow back that it doesn't matter if they play, up in Pittsburgh and it's freezing, or if they're down in whatever, a southern state and it's outside and it's 100 degrees outside. Ezekiel Elliott's going to bring it. The biggest issue that they have with him is that those explosive runs are gone. The fact that he only has 10 runs of 20 plus yards in the last 3 seasons combined. He had 14 his rookie year, led the entire NFL, and in the last 3 seasons combined, he only has 10. And that's the thing that's what you're paying for when he got that contract, is those big time home run hitting type plays like that, on top of still being able to be the hard nosed guy, run between the tackles, get the first downs and things like that. But when you lose out on those explosive plays, it's not worth it. And then they're for that dollar amount. And then the way the contract was structured, if it wasn't structured the way that it was, there's a good chance they would have parted ways with him this offseason the way they did with Amari Cooper. But they have at least one more year with him. And so that wasn't a great contract. And so again, to my point earlier, when you're building on drafting and paying your own, when you do decide to pay your own, you got to hit on those guys. And you can tell who the guys are now that they're focused on. I mean, the future going for them is they're focused on, they're going to have to pay Trayvon Diggs, they're going to have to pay Micah Parsons, and they're going to eventually have to pay CeeDee Lamb as well. And that's what they're focused on more so than, bringing anybody else in from outside.
All right, John, an NFL question. Can Baker Mayfield and Matt Rule save each other's careers?
I don't think so. I mean, it'll be entertaining to watch. I'm interested to see what they have going on there now that they have, they just spent a 3rd round pick on Matt Corral, and they have Sam Darnold. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know, man. I think Matt Rule's in a really tough spot. He's in a tough spot to succeed in Carolina, but for people like you and I, Paul, like, I wouldn't mind him being Florida State's next head coach. So that's my whole thing with him. Like, I just feel like, yeah, it's going to suck that it probably won't work out in Carolina, but like, man, I just feel like there's going to be college programs just beating down the door, top elite college programs. They're going to be like, oh yeah, we'll take you in a second if you want to get out of that NFL game. And maybe that's better for him anyway.
John, we appreciate you, man. Love the list. I do during this time of the year, really any time of the year. They're kind of fun to look at and interesting, and some things that I forgot about completely. Was it Carroll was on that list? I forgot all about.
Yeah, Batman. He used to go by Batman.
Thank you, John Machota, theathletic.com. Cowboys in the NFL with us on Wednesdays, usually around 5:30.
Yeah, he's right about Matt Rule. I mean, we covered him for 3 years here in Waco, and I still remember vividly the place I used to work, being in the studio there, and then we had been waiting pretty much on pins and needles, knew that an announcement was coming, pretty much any moment, whether it was that day or the day after or whatever. We knew Baylor was getting close to hiring a football coach. And Matt Groves does a great job of keeping hires pretty under the radar, and certainly Matt Rule was. I mean, I think if you go back and look in hindsight, there might have been a couple of mentions of him as a candidate, having talked to Baylor or being rumored for, the Oregon job obviously was out there. But, yeah, I mean, he came to Waco in a really tough time and set them up nicely, and then, was gone right after that Sugar Bowl appearance, and it felt like the world was falling apart again because you had just fallen in the Big 12 title game, but it was a big deal to get there. Then you fell in the Sugar Bowl, and that entire week was just all talk about him going to the NFL. But it wasn't even the Panthers. It was the Jets that was the big rumor. But the entire time we were in New Orleans, as they're getting ready to play freaking Georgia, it was all about him leaving. And it was just weird, man. And I was happy, though, to see him, get the dream job and get a really cushy gig there with Carolina and good ownership and all of that in terms of, the money and everything at his disposal. But, Yeah, it's not working out like I thought ultimately. The NFL being his big dream gig, and that's unfortunate. But his saving grace is, like John said, that there will be teams lining up to bring him back into college football and pay him big money, and not just like starting back at tier. No, like you're talking Florida State. You're talking like if Texas opened up, I bet they'd interview Matt Rule. I think anybody would interview Matt Rule in the college game.
Heck yeah, especially if you are trying to do an organizational rebuild is what Baylor needed at the time, where, maybe it's kind of like what LSU just had to do this year with Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly not only brought to LSU, he's won a ton of games at a big-time program in Notre Dame, but he is top-down flow chart organizationally better than most coaches are when it comes to that. That's what Matt Rule had to bring back to Baylor because it was so chaotic before he got hired because of everything that went on. So if you have a university that's maybe got okay players, but you're not really, running the athletic department or the football program the right way, Matt Rule is a bonus to hire that way too. So,
yeah, I thought he would do well, but it's so much more different than college. And even though he had experience, one of the thoughts about today's trade with Baker Mayfield, and this was from a pro football writer who said, and one of those that you can trust for a lot of his insight, is one of the things that Rule felt like he may just know more than some of the others when it came to his quarterback room, that he could outthink some of the rest of the league. 19,999 right now on the subscribers.
That's awesome.
And that's
you folks are great.
So yes, thank you. And so that was something that was kind of a little bit of a shot, but it also would not surprise me.
I mean, you can debate his handling of quarterbacks in Waco. That situation was never just perfect. I mean, all credit to Charlie, but it wasn't just like they had a star there and that, so if you really look back at the last several years, there's always been kind of a quarterback issue, whether it's health, depth, whatever. And that has plagued him. And so hopefully, Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold or whatever the combination and the starter is eventually going to be works out in his favor. But that is the saving grace, is that he does have that college football parachute, you would think, no matter what.
Yeah, because he was damn good. What he did at Temple was incredible. What he did at Baylor at the time was the perfect fit at the time.
I will say this. If you look at his roster, outside of tight end, a healthy running back, they've improved the offensive line. Their defense has guys you'd want all over it. I mean, seriously, their defense is really, really good under Phil Snow. He's got a roster outside of quarterback that you can win with. Now, DJ Moore is an outstanding wide receiver. Terrence Marshall in his second year is an outstanding young wide receiver. And Robbie Anderson, but they've got other guys. They brought in Rashard Higgins from Cleveland, who's a good, reliable player. So they've got a roster that I think you can win with if you have the good quarterback. But again, it's kind of like, and Garrett knows this all too well in the years before Joe Burrow, Les Miles, it could get 21 out of 22 starters that everybody would burn the building down to get, but they could not get a quarterback who could walk and chew gum or was even potty trained. I mean, it was just bad.
And a lot of the times they would do multiple quarterback situations, whether it was, it just never worked out. And they put too much emphasis on running the ball. But, yeah, Joe Burrow, the greatest thing to ever come to LSU.
Oh, gosh, man.
Really?
I mean, just imagine.
Better than Tommy Casanova, the great All-American cornerback?
Yeah.
Don't ever underestimate what Matt Flynn did.
Hey, Matt Flynn is the one that started the whole SEC
title.
dominance. If you think about it, I was just talking earlier about Oklahoma in the early 2000s and them losing to LSU. And now, granted, that wasn't because of Matt Flynn, and that was mock, yeah. But I mean, for him to follow up and grab a national championship right after that, LSU suddenly got 2, just boom, boom, and then then Burrow eventually years later. Now they've got 3 since 2000. So it's crazy how that worked out for them, and great that it worked out for them. But yeah, Matt Rule, if he can solve the quarterback issue, and certainly that's a major issue, he should do well. But we very well might be talking, here in a few months about. Well, for sure, we're going to be talking about some coaching rumor mill, how early that starts. Is it going to be Joey McGuire early? Is that going to become the new norm in college football where you see assistants, especially top assistants, leaving before the season's over? Or is that something that still continues to be more of a postseason thing? Either way, when that rumor mill pops up, everybody's going to be looking at Carolina and kind of what the situation is there to see what's what.
Yeah. 20,000 plus subscribers.
Y'all are awesome.
To tell some of you, and we appreciate it, and there's no question what has happened in college athletics from last year's Texas and Oklahoma story that popped in late July to what's happened last week with USC and UCLA. We were rolling and we were growing. The online and the subscribers, the YouTube, it kind of something we got a little bit late into. In late July of last year, we had 2,700 subscribers. Soon after the Texas-Oklahoma story, that thing popped pretty quickly to about 10,000. Now we're at 20,000, and we understand it's because of you and because of the stories that we get to cover and the information you like, want, and what we try to provide for you. So thank you very much for that. And our sponsors, thank you very much as well.
All right, so we got to fulfill a promise.
Yeah, we do.
The next person to text us right now,
254-339.
Only one. 339-1122. 254-339-1122. Hat. Say, I need your address.
What do they have to say?
Oh, my God, look at this.
Yeah, good luck breaking that tie, buddy.
Let's see. 214. The 214, you're the first.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is unbelievable, all the others. So we have a winner. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. Thank you. This was amazing. We did this yesterday with a couple of hats. And so the 214, I'm about to text you back, and we'll get information. We have the winner, and we aren't done giving away the Sikkim 365 hats. Incredibly popular, and we appreciate you. When we come back, 544, I think we've been able to. There were a couple of other nuggets. Baylor's playing tonight, by the way, up in Toronto. They got beat up yesterday by Italy.
Hey, they did, but they did it without the majority of their starters. And Keontae George was
He's a star.
Roof.
Yeah, Keontae George. Get ready to hear a lot about him upcoming college basketball season. He's a star. He's going to be a one and done. Just obviously barring health and all those kind of things, but he's legit. And that was a team that wasn't full bore, but kudos to Italy. I mean, that's why you go play those games. But, yeah, a lot of reasons to be excited about Keontae George.
A couple of little quick things here. David Mims, former Baylor football player, played a great player at Dangerfield, sent me a text yesterday. You guys have a great show. I love it. He watches us all the time. We appreciate that. Also, 0X Dead Beef on premium section. That's his name. And Hob Howe. And also Lion Bear. 3 people that have really brought some great insight to what might be happening with all of what's going on with college football. And there's so many others, but I wanted to bring them up because Sikkim365.com, the premium section, has some great information too. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace. They had I was there. In fact, I was there on July 3rd, Saturday, to go and get a couple of different things for me for that weekend. But now, new specials, including Select and Choice and Prime New York Strip Steak, $8.25, $9.99, and $16.99 a pound. Select Brisket for $3.49 a pound. Regular Piggy Stick at $2.99 a pound. Hot Links, $3.50 a pound. And then also chicken wings, $3.99 a pound. And this is a bag of chicken wings. These are dudes now. I mean, like big, thick chicken wings, the drumettes, or also the rest of the wing. Bacon ends and pieces, $2.75 a pound. That's what's going on, the weekly specials right now at Waco Custom Marketplace. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family do an incredible job at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. And even though it's a little bit early, in a couple of months, there's going to be football, tailgating. Don't forget about that. And they are your place for tailgating in the Waco area at Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Baylor University is where lights shine bright. So, let there be light. Let there be roommates and teammates, scholarship and championships. Let there be fresh starts and new traditions, fast friendships and lasting impacts. Let there be laughter. Let there be joy. Let there be light. Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Payments for qualified buyers are 2.9% for 72 with $5,000 down cash or trade. TTL extra. See dealer for details. Step up your ride at Richard Carr's Summer Savings Event. Find summer savings like a 2018 GMC Sierra SLT, only $432 a month, or a 2017 Buick Encore for $183 a month, or GMC Acadia for only $280 a month. Our vehicles go through a 172-point inspection. We pay top dollar for your trade, and 100% approval is always our goal. Find your next car or truck today at Richard Carr.
At Richard Carr, we give you more.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible and rewarding challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingham with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like our free First mobile app, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. That's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Tom Albers, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If your financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Tom Albers, 4301 Lakeshore Drive, 254-776-7605. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 555.
Top 5 schools at the ACC can't lose. So, look, there are, there's 15 schools in the ACC right now, right? 15, 14, whatever there are. 14. But there's 5 that hold all the power.
Can't be odd, can it?
Well, I guess I'm counting Notre Dame in that, and because they play 4 games a year against the ACC, so Notre Dame's in that. Notre Dame, obviously they're not football in there.
Paul, now you got me doubting how many teams are in the ACC. I think
there's 15 in basketball. Because of Notre Dame.
So then there's 14.
So there's 14 in football.
Yeah, so it's 14. Yeah, so there's 15 in basketball. I said there's 15. But yeah, there's 15 in basketball. Number 5, UVA. Look, they have not had success. They've had success recently in basketball, won the national championship in 2019, obviously, and Tony Bennett's done a great job managing to win games without scoring many points. Because they don't. They win every game like 51-40, 43.
They're a damn good team, though.
Good.
That's the one that beat Tech, right?
Yeah. But Virginia, in football, look, they might have a nice upswing this year. I really love the Tony Elliott hire for them. But I do think that when you come to when it comes to academics, endowment, Virginia's a big state, all of that. Virginia has a ton of value, especially to someone like the Big Ten. Like, they're a match with the Big Ten if they decided to expand. I'm actually kind of surprised, and maybe it was just because Maryland was so ready to go that Virginia wasn't the one when they did it the first time and came into the ACC. But Virginia, to me, makes a ton of sense, or it has more power than people may realize.
Yeah, I think this when I first started thinking about it would be like just a classic SEC fit, just in terms of like the state schools and that whole part of the country. But then I started seeing, a lot of talk about them in the Big Ten and how they would fit into a package and all of that jazz. I do love the Tony Elliott hire. I mean, they're going to have a great quarterback, Brennan Armstrong coming back, so that's really going to help them out tremendously. But, and Elliott, it's going to be fun to see these new coaches, kind of like a Brent Venables as well at Oklahoma, kind of these guys getting their starts and running their programs. But But yeah, I don't really know where they're viewed because, if you read Twitter, I mean, who knows what's true and what's not, but they seem to be a team that could provide value, but not to the extent that they're worth adding and devaluing. Like, they don't bring more extra added value, but in terms of a lot of the things that you look for academically and location and things like that, yeah, absolutely, they'd be a great fit for somebody.
Yeah. Number 4, and I know this is probably further down the list than most people realize, but Miami. Miami, it's kind of interesting. I was talking to a guy this morning who was here, and he was asking me about this. And I said, what's funny about Miami is after they won the national title in 2001, they got hit with the Nevin Shapiro scandal, and they kind of backed off of everything. They kind of made the organizational decision that we're not going to be as aggressive with football, and then they kind of sloughed through some hires, and Mark Richt was a great hire for them, but had health problems and had to leave, and so they've kind of been in this dead zone for a long time. And they're also a small private school. That's what people maybe not realize about it nationally. They don't know about the school. The school is in the city of Miami, which is gigantic, but the school itself is a small private school.
Is there any school that has a different image from actuality than Miami?
Probably not. So because of what they were able to do in the 80s and 90s and 01, people think of them one way than they actually are as an organization. Now, a lot of the things that Nevin Shapiro did or that they did and got put on probation for are now legal. So now instead of having to reinvent the playbook, they can just go back to what they were doing and be Miami again. So there's a lot of money flowing in. They're in a gigantic TV market. They're a gigantic brand name. They have value to anyone that they would add, especially now that the rules have changed, that they can figure out how to make their football team successful again.
If they don't get back to the mountaintop in the next few years, and I don't know that they ever are. I mean, between Cristobal coming back home and scooping him from Oregon and the big get that he was to basically, just being able to be Miami without any of the rules in place that's barred you from being able to just blatantly and openly do that, even though they still did in some cases. What was the hot tub commitment from the Dallas Carter kid? The excess.
Jesse Armstead,
Armstead, but it's the excess and all. They can embrace that now.
Luther Campbell doesn't have to pretend anymore.
Right. Just do whatever. I mean, basically, So, I mean, this is, of all the schools that are, standing to benefit the most from NIL, I mean, there's a lot of them, but Miami is one of the top, no doubt about it. I mean, it completely changes their trajectory, and they could still be, a powerful school regardless of if NIL was going to be passed or not. But between getting Cristobal back home and NIL hitting at the same time and realignment, I mean, they've really got a window right here that's a prime window for them. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Miami market and just the tradition and the history and all that is going to be coveted by a lot of people.
Yeah. Number 3, Clemson. Clemson, I have them at 3 here just for the simple fact that they're kind of new money. That's it. That's the only reason. They are a juggernaut in football. They're not really great in a whole lot of other things athletically, but not like they are in football. But Dabo Swinney has put them on the map again. They had some history back in the 80s, and then they went through a time of being, at best, a really good team, but not great. Now they're a pretty great program, and as long as they, rebound from last year where, when you lose all 5 of your offensive linemen, you're probably going to have a dip no matter how good you were the year before. So we'll see. And plus the quarterback's got to play better, whoever that winds up being at Clemson. But Clemson is valuable because they're a national brand now. Like you heard Tim Brando earlier say, on and off the field, they've made themselves really, really recognizable. People know what that paw is, and that's a big deal. Now, there's some political things that would happen in the SEC, but I do think this. Anybody that doesn't want their in-state rival in the SEC now, so South Carolina and Florida would jump into this category, after Texas came in last year, doesn't really have a leg to stand on because A&M didn't want that, and everybody voted against them. So
And I don't think probably Arkansas did either.
Yeah.
So
Missouri probably didn't.
Absolutely. But yeah, with Clemson, they're an automatic. If the Big 12 could grab them right now, you'd grab them. If the Pac-12 could swing that somehow, they would do so. But yeah, to me, that's the brand that's next up now. What's interesting is post Dabo. What is that? Because so much is based off him, and I know they had some tradition prior to that. But like the Clemson now is the Dabo Clemson that built off of the 80s and all of that. But yeah, it's remarkable to see growing up watching college football, of where they're very respectable and notable and all that, but to where they are now or where they have been here recently, it's quite the journey.
And it would not shock me to see Dabo Swinney retire like Bob Stoops early, because he doesn't care for this new era of college football. It's not his bag. He's not, he's not going to fight against what he needs to make the team better, but he doesn't like it. And he's been very vocal about that.
Yeah, well, and he's got a little less vocal because every time he talks about it, it goes wrong for him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negative backlash, but they're set up very well with him or without him. Obviously, if he were to do what you said, then there would be plenty of candidates lining up, because they've seen now what you can do there, how you can maximize, all that's available to you. And yeah, they're really strong, and they would be really strong for whoever could scoop them up. But I think that's what would be interesting is that, as we're talking with Brando about about the Big Ten or the SEC, if that came down to it in a little courtship, it would be really interesting to see that, and we might see that pretty soon.
Number 2, Florida State. Look, I said this, only put them at 2 because their TV ratings are still really good. So you can put Florida State on against anybody, and you're going to get ratings. And so that Notre Dame game last year that they really should have won, but they almost pulled off, was a huge ratings. And Florida State has been mediocre at best, if not downright crappy the last few years, but they still have a draw and could be big if you give them resources. So it's a brand that could resuscitate itself very easily given the resources you would have in an SEC.
They can, but they need to do it.
Yeah,
they can't keep dragging this whole resurgence out and then go through another coaching search if Mike Norvell's not the one that works out. So this will be a really interesting year for them to see kind of how far along they are.
Yeah, it's a huge year for Mike Norvell. Number 1, North Carolina. The best basketball brand in the country. A football team that can get good. Look, they got Mac Brown right now. They can get good if they really focus on it. And an educational endowment that rivals most everybody but probably Stanford. They have a ton of money. It's a great, great school academically. Ironically, they are the one school in the ACC that might be the best academic school, but they also had the largest academic scandal in the school, so that's kind of weird. But UNC, I do think that UNC fits the Big Ten. I think they probably fit the SEC as well, but if the Big Ten wanted to go east, then UNC makes a lot more sense than anybody else in this list, and I'm sure they would love to have that money, and the Big Ten academic pool of resources would really fit them well.
Yeah, they got a lot of major markets, whether you think that matters or it doesn't, but I was looking through the top 50 markets or whatever, and it's amazing how many just little conglomerates of Greenville, Asheville, Greensboro, and then there's Charlotte, there's Winston-Salem. There's like 7 different markets within North Carolina. I didn't really realize that, but
Tobacco Row.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they're well positioned. I think you could argue as far as like boom. Them and Clemson would probably be the 2. Like if Clemson jumped tomorrow or North Carolina jumped tomorrow, I think they'd probably have the biggest wow factor. But yeah, they're definitely arguably number 1 and one of the most coveted for reasons more than just football related. Absolutely.
All right, Paul. Thank you very much. Florida State probably a notch too high. I'm surprised you didn't just throw them in at 1.
I'd have Clemson higher, but that's just me. That'd be my list.
I picked them on television ratings and longevity of the brand. That's it. It's not on quality right now. They're hot buttered crap.
Yeah, if you were trying to pass this off as quality, then I would have an argument with you about Florida State's placement. But no, they're going to be really interesting to everything. We're right around the corner with it. I can't wait. Cristobal's first year, just these teams alone, this batch of 5, have a ton of interesting storylines, not to mention the realignment factor of it all as well. But it does seem like Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami would be the cutoff point, and then Virginia would be the one on the outside looking in as of right now, as far as, just rumor mill stuff. But I don't know. Who really knows? That's what we're all trying to figure out.
Florida State won it all in 13.
Yes.
Did they play for it again in 14? Or did they lose in the semis?
They were in the CFP and
Oregon?
And then James
Winston whoopsie-doo?
Yeah, the Winston whoopsie-doo, and the wheels came right on off.
All right. Thank you very much, all of you. Thanks, Jack McKenzie. Faith Lynch was here earlier. Also, Levi Caraway and Garrett Ross for joining us and doing what they do, which is magical to make us look and sound better. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, sponsors, thank you so much. Chat room, text line, listening online, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports, over 20,000 subscribers. I'm David Smoak. Good night.